slides. All right, great. So good morning. My name is Rohan Dalal, and I am a senior at Crystal Springs Upland School, and I'm also the founder and chair of the Hillsborough Youth Commission. I know we have some people from the Hillsborough Youth Commission here, and the founder of this organization, the California Association of Youth Commissions. And I just want to thank you all for coming and joining us early on this Saturday morning. There has never been a time in our US history where youth voice and our civic engagement in local government is as needed and as powerful as it is today, especially in light of our recent election last Tuesday. Events this week compel and provide us with the greatest opportunities in our communities to address the change that we seek, especially through our youth commissions. So today, we are excited to hear from adult advisors and youth who are passionate about creating positive change for young people in our communities and how we can also contribute to creating meaningful connections with our other residents. 2 years ago, I wanted to bring youth voice to local town policies, and I initially ran this idea by several adults in the town of Hillsborough, with whom I worked as an elementary and middle school student. And when I discussed this with one of my council members, Al Royce, he said it's about time. And so he and another council member, Miss Ragsdale, who will be speaking today, supported this opportunity to increase teens' civic engagement, but at the vote of the special session, our initiative unfortunately didn't reach the top five to move forward. But it is because of our mayor, Miss Christine Krolik, who will be speaking today, who creatively paired the starting of our youth commission with our new age-friendly city initiative to support our senior citizens, and thus the Hillsborough Youth Commission was born. And Mayor Krolik is here today this morning to share a few words of welcome. Just about Mayor Krolik, she served as a city council member, vice mayor, and now mayor for the past 10 years after having served her town through public schools and being recognized as the Hillsborough Citizen of the Year. She also served as the finance director for U.S. Congresswoman Jackie Speier. Please welcome Miss Christine Krolik.
Good morning. Thank you, Rohan. I appreciate that introduction. I appreciate you're all getting up early on a Saturday morning to participate in this. I also do want to introduce Councilmember Leslie Ragsdale, who is the Town of Hillsborough liaison to the Hillsborough Youth Commission. There's Leslie. I do want to echo what Rohan said about the activities that you're doing being more important than ever in our country. I don't know how many of you were surprised. I certainly was by the results of Tuesday's election. Not only that our local candidate, Kamala Harris, didn't prevail, but that it was that it wasn't even as close as we thought that it would be. So your voices are more important than ever. As you know, everything that's happening in this country right now is going to affect you more than anyone. You are the generation that are social media and tech savvy. And I think the challenge, and you probably have your minds around it more than I do, but is the need to combat this misinformation that's coming out. I mean, I read something this morning that said that when voters were showed two sets of priorities, they actually, by a large margin, were much more in favor with the priorities that the Democratic candidate favored rather than the one that the Republican, but yet they voted Republican. When those priorities were matched up, they were voting for the name, not actually for the policies. So our mainstream media, which I believe more or less operates on a certain set of facts, is being more and more discredited. Our government's being discredited. So it's more important than ever to elect public servants rather than politicians, to become public servants yourself rather than politicians, and to really serve. I mean, government service is a calling, and we need to roll up our sleeves and get in this fight and make sure that that the policies that this country follows are the ones that most of the people want and will benefit you and those of your generation, the generations to come afterwards. I'm a new grandmother, so I have a 1-month-old grandbaby, and I'm fighting for him. So thank you very much. Thank you for participating in these efforts. Know that we are behind you, we support you, and we're here for you however we can be. Thank you, Rohan.
Thank you so much. I know we have a lot of youth commissions here today, so I was wondering if everyone who's on here would mind introducing themselves and telling us which youth commission you're from. So my name is Rohan Dalal and I'm from the Hillsborough Youth Commission.
My name is Anya Dalal, and I'm also from Hillsborough Youth Commission.
Rohan, you may want to call the names because we may see people in different order.
Okay. Benjamin.
Hi, I'm Benjamin and I'm on the Belmont. Yeah.
Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia and I'm part of Los Altos Hills.
Penny.
Hi, I'm Penny. I'm part of the Burlingame Yak.
Alexander.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm part of the Walnut Commission.
Elizabeth. Okay. Harper.
Hi, everyone. I'm Harper Fortgang and I'm from the San Francisco Youth Commission.
Isabella.
Hi, I'm Isabella and I'm a part of the El Dorado Youth Commission.
Kira.
Hi, my name's Kira. I'm from the Santa Clara Youth Commission.
Nicholas.
Hello, my name is Nicholas. I'm from the Long Beach Youth Advisory Council.
Rikhav.
Hi, my name is Rikhav. I'm part of the San Mateo County Youth Commission.
And Varnica.
I'm Varnica and I'm part of the Sonoma County Youth Commission.
And then we'll come back to Elizabeth.
Hi, we're part of the Youth Commission here in Sonoma County. We're a little spread out. We're in a coffee shop right now, but we're happy to be here. There's about 6 to 7 of us. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Great that everyone, that all you guys have come out this Saturday morning. Cool. So, all right. I'm not sure if Jackie Speier is here yet. So I am just going to, and then Mr. Liccardo will be coming at 9:30. So I'm just gonna jump into. So as an introduction to the California Association of Youth Commissions, after I started the Hillsborough Youth Commission, over time I saw a need for a state level consortium of youth commissions to transmit best practices that we had learned in creating our own youth commission, to facilitate other towns in establishing their own youth commissions. And so that's how I founded this organization. And I reached out to all the towns to see if they had youth commissions. And I'm really appreciative that over 50 youth commissions filled out our survey and agreed to do Zoom interviews with me to help me learn a lot about their youth commissions. I also observed that youth commissions in California disproportionately existed in higher income towns. And so I thought as a group we could help others create youth commissions in their communities by providing resources that have never existed before. In Hillsborough, we also started initiatives like a digital tech day, a summer internship base, a mental health survey, and a fentanyl awareness day, emphasizing the need for access to Narcan. But I realized that our voice would be louder and more effective in Sacramento if all of the youth commissions collaborated together. And so that those three things are why I founded the CAYC. And the CAYC is a pioneering organization dedicated to uniting youth commissions across California to share best practices, collaborate on initiatives, and enhance the well-being of our peers in our communities. And while youth commissions exist across the nation, no state has something like the CAYC in terms of its approach and connecting local youth commissions. So I appreciate all of you for being pioneers in this way. And the organization is really trying to leverage deep grassroots insights of local youth commissions to inform and drive policy recommendations in a way that the representatives in Sacramento can't, because obviously they're not teens. So a little bit about our mission and our goals. The CAYC seeks to be a powerful collective voice influencing legislation to benefit youth by forming a state level association. Local youth commissions can share resources, best practices, and support one another in their efforts to empower youth and teens. In addition to that, a key goal is for us is to understand and address disparities among youth commissions. And despite the clear benefits, such as providing a voice for young teens in local government and fostering civic engagement, many towns in California lack youth commissions due to limited funding, high poverty rates, and reduced access to educational and recreational programs. There's about over 300 towns that don't have a youth commission. And so by identifying these barriers, the CAYC aims to develop strategies to encourage the formation and sustainability of youth commissions across all communities. So let's see. So, yeah. Hold on. Let's see if Miss Speier is here yet. Great.
She is.
Perfect timing. Miss Speier. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker, former Congresswoman Jackie Speier. Born in San Francisco and initially trained as a lawyer, she served as the San Mateo County Board Supervisor, the youngest woman elected to the board in 1980, and she was elected chair. In 1986, she was elected to the California State Senate and was reelected 4 times. And in 2008, she began her 15-year career representing districts 12 and 14 in our U.S. Congress. This spring, she came full circle and was reelected to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors 40 years after she first served. She has always served as a voice to uplift youth, and the Jackie Speier Foundation is dedicated to ending child poverty in San Mateo County. And as a Congresswoman, she had her own youth advisory board. So please welcome Supervisor-elect Speier.
Thank you, Rohan. It's great to be with all of you. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity. I see that the mayor of Hillsborough, my dear friend Christine Krolik, is on the line as well. And I can't see anyone else. I'm sure there are many more, but it's great to be with you. I'm wearing this sweater today that I want you to see. It reads, "Let all the dreamers wake the nation." And I'm wearing it to convey to all of you that you're in charge. You may not feel that you're in charge, but you are in charge. And we need to hear from you. We need to recognize that, the baby boomers have done a lousy job kind of preparing the country to turn over to you. And we've tried to make amends. We've tried to, put in place $359 billion for climate protections and incentives. I worry now that with our next president, President-elect Donald Trump, that there will be efforts made to cut back on those. So it's going to be important for all of us to speak up about how important it is. I was with a longtime environmentalist yesterday who said that we're kind of doomed. If we don't take serious steps in the near term, we're doomed. And it was very sobering to hear that. And so I want and expect that all of you will use your voices locally and nationally to be heard, because this is your world and you are the dreamers that, in fact, can wake up our country. I'm delighted to be able to join you. I see that Congressman-elect Sam Liccardo, former mayor of San Jose, is going to be joining shortly. He will have some great messages for you. I will just say this, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have. I started in politics at 16. I got hooked on politics at 16, working for my first campaign. And I'm sure many of you have had that experience as well. So because I had that experience early, and life took its various paths, I only applied to 2 colleges. Stanford was one of them, and I was rejected. And the other college I had applied to, because my parents just allowed me to apply to 2 colleges, was UC Davis. And it was perfect because I was 20 minutes from the state capitol. So by the time I was a sophomore, I was working as an intern for then Assemblyman Leo Ryan, and then eventually got a paid position and worked on a number of projects in his office that really expanded my horizon. So, I mean, part of my message to you, you obviously love public policy or you wouldn't be engaged in the youth commissions. Don't ever see a failure as a death knell. Failure is typically the first step to success. I am a 3-time loser. I lost for student body president in high school. I stayed home from school for 3 days. I was so beaten down and thought my life was over and that nobody liked me. And then I lost the first time I ran for Congress after Congressman Ryan was assassinated in Guyana, and I was his legal counsel at the time. I had been shot 5 times and left for dead on that airstrip in Jonestown, Guyana. When I came back, I decided I just didn't want to be known as a survivor of Jonestown for the rest of my life. So on the very last day that I could take papers out to run for his unexpired term in Congress, I did. It was a 6-week campaign. There were 12 candidates, and I lost again. But it prepared me the following year to run for the Board of Supervisors in San Mateo County. And I was and continue to be the youngest member ever elected to the Board of Supervisors. So I then ran for the state, served on the board for 6 years, ran for the state assembly, served for 10, ran for the state senate, served for 8. And then I ran for lieutenant governor. And again, I lost. So losing is really how you prepare yourself to win. So I hope that you will take calculated risks. Do not be afraid to fail. I keep a paperweight on my desk that reads, "What would you do if you knew you could not fail?" And it reminds me over and over again how important it is to get out there and, as Nike says, just do it. I think that the youth commissions are really important in our communities because we need to have our pulse on what is important to you, what you're concerned about. I'm very concerned that young people have a great deal of anxiety and pressure. And I think that social media has, hold on 1 second, I just have to leave someone here a message. That was my daughter calling. That social media has made life so much more complicated and so tough that I think the community has to look at ways that we can raise you up and make you feel hopeful. And for those of you that may have worked on this presidential campaign, maybe some of you supported President-elect Trump, maybe some of you supported Vice President Kamala Harris. It's important to appreciate that this government, that we are committed to the peaceful transfer of power. Now, that didn't happen in 2020, but we want to make an example this year that we absolutely are committed to a peaceful transfer of power. And Donald Trump has been elected. We have to respect the fact that the electorate, by at least 5 million more voters, have chosen him. And he has now the opportunity to serve the American people. That doesn't mean for those, and I'm one of them, that don't support his policies, that we don't speak out. It doesn't mean that we don't engage. In fact, it means that we redouble our efforts, but we respect the office and we want to protect this democracy. So that's sort of the challenge that we have moving forward. I am rejoining the Board of Supervisors in January. I'm very excited about it because after all these years in politics, I realized that all politics is local and I can do so much more on a local level, frankly, than I could in Congress, because Congress is kind of set up to maintain the status quo. It's kind of, it doesn't do change easily or willingly. I can't tell you the number of bills I had that were bipartisan, had Republican and Democratic support, that would pass the House and then just sit in the Senate, because the Senate does not have an obligation to take up any bills. Now, in the state legislature, where I loved my work, every bill has an opportunity to be heard in committee. And if you can galvanize the support, you can get it passed and potentially signed into law. So during my years in the state legislature, I had 300 bills that were signed into law. And California is, you know, the 4th largest economic power in the world. So when you do things here, it oftentimes means that they will ripple across the country. So as you think about your future and what you want to do, be prepared for the unexpected. I see young people sometimes that have this whole plan of how they're going to get from here to there. Life doesn't happen that way. So be more flexible, because you'll find that if you're more flexible, you're going to be able to pivot, which I think is a very important word. I talk about the word pivot because it means to me that you have to have a purpose in life, that we all have a responsibility to inspire the next generation, that it's important to have a vision, and it's important to be open to new experience that might come your way, or doing things differently than you've done them before. And then T is time. Don't waste a minute of time, because time is really precious. I almost lost my life 46 years ago. So I've really made a commitment to live every day as fully as I can, and to pay it forward. And I think we all have an obligation to pay it forward. And it gives us great sense of accomplishment and satisfaction when we are able to do something on behalf of others. So, Ron, I think at this point, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, because I think we have a few more minutes. Do we not?
Oh, yes, you. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I have a question. Congresswoman Speier, of all the different offices that you have held, was there one that you did that you enjoyed more than any other?
Well, I certainly, they all had, they were all valuable experiences. I think in terms of getting things done, the state legislature was a very impactful experience. I'm looking forward to working on the Board of Supervisors, because I'm going to be able to do things very specifically for my local communities. So I would say that, they all have their value, but I do think that the state legislature was probably the place where I was able to do the most good.
Well, we're looking forward to having you on the County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
I'm
Um,
sure there's other questions. Just use the raised hand feature or just speak out.
I have a question. First of all, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciated what you had to say. And I was wondering if you have any advice on like what youth could do to get involved in making legislation.
Well, when I got elected to the Board of Supervisors, I created a student advisory committee, or a group of interns. And every year they picked a project, and then they would bring it to the Board of Supervisors, and we would actually take action on whatever the issue was. I remember at one point, they were concerned about chemicals in schools, the chemicals in chem labs and the like, and how to dispose of them appropriately. So we passed an ordinance that provided for the proper disposal of chemicals in school labs. We did, this is going back 44 years now, so I'm not remembering all of them, but every year, besides learning all about county government, the students would take on an issue that they thought that they wanted to see happen, and we would make things happen. Now, when I was in Congress, I had a number of students that worked with me as well, and we did a town hall on the stressors that young people have, and what family members could do to help young people. So there's lots of opportunities. And I will be starting a student intern program once I'm elected. And if you're interested, you can, contact my office after January, and we'll let you know what the process will be. And I highly recommend getting involved. I'm sure that Congressman Mullen probably has a similar program, and many of the state legislators do as well. It really helps you decide what you want to do in life. Some people may think they want to get involved in public policy, and then they get into it, and that's not what I want to do. So, in your high school years, it's a great time and opportunity to explore areas that you think you might be interested in. If you think you might be interested in business, go to a local store and say, you're willing to volunteer. Or if you're interested in healthcare, work as a volunteer at one of the hospitals. It's, I think, helpful to have those experiences. And more often than not, when you start volunteering, they hire you on some level as a part-time staff member. One of the things I want to do is create a program called County Corps. And we want to work with the schools and the community colleges, and I want to create pathways for young people to come work in county government, because you already live here, your family's here, and if we can create a pathway for you to work in public policy in the county, I think it benefits everybody. So that will be something we'll be working on moving forward as well.
I think Kira has a question from the Santa Clara Youth Commission.
Yes. Thank you so much for speaking to us. I know earlier they mentioned that you have your foundation to combat youth poverty in San Mateo County, and that's also an objective of the Santa Clara County. So I was wondering if you could elaborate more on what actions you're taking, so hopefully we can also implement it in our county as well.
Thank you for the question. So I created the foundation and funded it with $1 million that was left over from my campaign. And we started doing research. San Mateo County is the richest county in California and the 4th richest in the country. And we have 27,000 children that are living in poverty. 2,000 of them are homeless. So I was trying to figure out what we could do to deal with the issue. So in my way of doing things, I often like to sit down with people who are experiencing what I want to try and fix. So over the course of about 6 months, I met with lots of mothers who had small children. Some of these stories were heartbreaking. These mothers were working 2 jobs. One was that I remember very vividly, was a victim of domestic violence for many years and then left. And then another one, had married someone who had another family in Mexico. These were moms that were born in the city of San Mateo. So anyway, over the course of that time, I realized that there's something we could do. Now, when we had COVID, we had a child tax credit that lifted half the children in this country out of poverty. And in reading and studying what the NIH has done and some other entities, I realized that we really have an obligation to infants from 0 to 3. So I fundraised, and we've raised now almost $9 million. And starting in January, we're going to randomly give newborn Medicaid eligible infants that are born in San Mateo County $300 a month for the first 3 years of life. And we're going to measure their brain development with EEGs. We're also going to provide through community healthcare workers, which are being created for the very first time, this opportunity for them to have access to community healthcare workers on a regular basis. And we'll have a group that gets both the money and the healthcare worker support, and then a group that will just get the money, and then a group that will just get regular services in San Mateo County. And then Stanford University is going to do the evaluation. And so the goal is to then, if the results are what I think they will be, we'll go back to Congress and say, all right, if you're not going to do it for all children under the age of 18, at least do it for the children 0 to 3 when all the brain development happens. An infant's brain doubles in size in the first year of life. And by year 3, it's 80% of an adult brain in terms of volume. So it's a critical time for a child. So we can save money in special education. We can save money in a criminal justice system by giving these kids a chance to really thrive. So that's one of the things we're doing. The other thing, and students, we've done this with students at Terra Nova High School that came up with a plan and a diaper drive. And about a month ago, they did a diaper drive in Daly City, because diapers are really expensive and you can't use food stamps to buy diapers. You can't use food stamps for feminine hygiene products. And so they did this diaper drive, and we then distributed all the packages of diapers to a number of the nonprofits in Daly City. And my hope is to do it across the county in schools throughout the county that are interested in doing it. So it's part of what we want to do is make people aware that, hiding in plain sight in our communities are people in need. And people in our communities are very generous, but most of their money goes to their alma maters across the country, or goes to international groups. And I think part of what I'm going to try and do is hopefully alert everyone that we've got needs right here. One of the things I'd urge you to do too, I learned this from Congressman Ryan, it's sort of experiential legislating. He went and spent a week at Folsom Prison when he was in the state assembly, and also went and taught in South Central LA right after the riots. And so I've made it a point of doing that. I spent time at the women's prison in Cowchilla when I was in state legislature. And more recently, I spent the night at the homeless shelter in San Mateo. And I was so stunned by what I learned. A couple comes out here to work with a developer who then gets sick, and now they're without a place to live. He's working at a warehouse for Office Depot. She's working at the bakery in Safeway. And I thought to myself, she's staying at the homeless shelter and she's working at Safeway. So when you pick up your loaf of bread from the clerk at Safeway, you don't think that they're homeless, right? But in this case, they were. I also spoke with a young man who had just gotten out of the veterans program in Menlo Park for drug rehab. And he says, you know, I came back from the Iraq War and I was making 6 figures at one of the tech companies. And then he just spiraled out of control. And he looked at me and he said, you have no idea what my country forced me to do in Iraq. So these stories are helpful in making us aware that, you know, things aren't necessarily black or white. It's important for us to understand what's really going on and not just presume by what we read or what people look like. I think there's a lot we can do around poverty in both Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. And it would be fun when you talk to Congressman-Elect Liccardo to see, you know, what he has in store for young people as he embarks on his new position.
Great. Thank you so much, Supervisor-elect Speier, for your inspiring words and inspiring work. Actually, it is my honor to now introduce U.S. Congressman-elect Sam Liccardo. Raised in Saratoga, Congressman-elect Liccardo received his Juris Doctor and Master of Public Policy at Harvard. In 2006, he started his career as a San Jose City Council member. In 2014, he was elected mayor of the city of San Jose, where he led innovation for transportation, including better bikeways and the Smart City Vision, where he brought free wireless internet to San Jose's high schools. In addition, he launched the San Jose Digital Inclusion Fund to bridge the digital divide by extending broadband to low-income families. Moreover, he spearheaded gun violence reduction by a first-in-the-nation initiative to require gun owners to pay annual fees, which could save lives in a nation where 4.6 million children live in a home where a gun is kept loaded and unlocked. As an advocate to address homelessness, he also oversaw the All the Way Home campaign to house over 1,000 veterans. And this past Tuesday, he was elected to represent District 16 in the U.S. House of Representatives as the first Latino member of Congress to represent Northern California in over 120 years. Please welcome Congressman-elect Liccardo.
Rohan, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks to you and Anya for convening us. And I really want to give a very big thank you to former Congresswoman Jackie Speier, who has been an incredibly courageous leader, not just for our region, but for our country, and just very blessed to be able to seek her advice and to have someone like that who is so very deeply knowledgeable and leading the charge still on issues, as you heard, about child health and poverty prevention that are so critically important for our country. So I just wanted to say how honored I am to be able to follow in some way, I hope, in Jackie's footsteps, Speier's footsteps. Hey, I would be happy just to engage in a conversation. I don't want to engage in a long speech. I know you see me here in the passenger seat of a car. My wife is driving. We are, as you can imagine, just a couple days after the election. We decided we'd take 2 days of downtime before I have to scramble and fly back to DC and get an office set up. So this is our moment of a break. And my wife is patiently putting up on my phone calls in the car. But I just wanted to offer 2 thoughts, and then I'd love just to go to a conversation where you can raise whatever ideas, questions, comments that you might have. I'd love to have a conversation. My 2 thoughts are these: that what you are bringing in youth commissions throughout the state is so critically important for 2 reasons. One is that we have, certainly in this country, and we see it in metros throughout the country, a lot of really bad policy driven by what I call a tyranny of myopia, tyranny of short-term thinking. We have saddled your generation and following generations with a planet that is less and less habitable for human beings, because of climate change. We've saddled the next generation with $35 trillion in debt. And you know, grateful for the leadership of people like Congressman Speier, but I think she would also say that we're underinvesting in child health, education in so many ways, where we need to be investing in the next generation, and really undermining the spirit, what I call the immigrant ethos that has created our country, which is that the notion that this generation always makes for a better country for the next generation. So we need you deeply engaged because you have inherently the long view in mind. You're going to be in this country, running this country for many, many decades to come. And we need folks with that long-term perspective. And inevitably that is our young adults, to help us make much better policy than frankly what we have seen in the past. And so I'm grateful that each of you is engaged in this endeavor because we critically need your perspective. The second thing I just wanted to second reason why I think it's so important for you to be engaged is that we got into a lot of these challenges that we're facing globally and nationally because of the same way of thinking. And we are critically going to need innovation. We need innovation to help us figure out how we are going to help millions of Americans be able to upskill and reskill in an economy that is driving a deeper and deeper wedge between people. We know what's coming with artificial intelligence, or at least we think we know. We know it's already been happening with automation and globalization and march of technology. That's just one example of an area where we need innovation to help people learn to acquire the skills they critically are going to need to be able to survive in this rapidly changing economy. And so all that's going to require us to think about solutions in a way that's very different than we thought in the past. And that's why your engagement is so critically important, because the thinking of the past isn't going to solve the problems of the future. It's going to take your thinking, your different approach, your willingness to think more innovatively, that is going to help us tackle these challenges. So I really welcome your engagement. And I know that Anya, who is currently the member representing this district, did a great job creating youth commissions throughout the district to help cultivate ideas and cultivate engagement. I absolutely am going to follow that great model and try to do what I can to ensure for those of you who live in the district. I know most of you don't, but really hoping that what you have generated with youth commissions throughout our state is something that we're able to replicate more strongly, not just at the local level, but also at the federal and state level, because we need your ideas and your participation. So thank you all, and I'm going to stop talking now. I'd love to hear your good thoughts and questions.
Thank you so much. First of all, congratulations on being elected to your first term as a U.S. Congressman. What are your hopes for your first term as a U.S. Congressman, especially as a Democrat in a Republican-controlled legislative branch?
Yeah, it was Congresswoman Speier would probably tell you that it's pretty hard as a first-term member of the huge impact of policy. There's this process that determines what committees you get on and a lot of other things. And I certainly understand that. And it's even harder if you're in the minority party, as I suspect I will be based on what we're seeing currently in the projections, although certainly we hope that perhaps some of these late returns might break our way. And so I recognize it's a very challenging, daunting path in these next 2 years. What I'm going to be trying to do is finding ways to build relationships that will help us in the long run be able to accomplish what we critically need to accomplish. I'm very hopeful if we're not able to get the majority this year, then we're going to do everything we can to ensure we can get that majority in 2 years and really provide a strong bulwark protection for a lot of the critical things that we all care about: protecting democratic institutions, protecting rights like reproductive rights that are so important. And in the meantime, in these 2 years, I think it's going to be around picking my spots. A lot's going to depend on what committee I get assigned to, but looking for those opportunities where I actually think Republicans, or at least a few Republicans, might agree with a few Democrats to get something done in areas where we should be able to share a common concern. For example, we see some bipartisan unity around issues of protecting children online and what we need to do to ensure better protections. And there has been some hopeful indication of bipartisan consensus around things like ensuring we have better on social media platforms, better age verification, prohibiting push notifications to youth, prohibiting data collection from young people. These are the kinds of protections we need to codify in statute so we can provide uniform protections nationwide. Now, that's just one example. I think there are many others, despite what you might see in the papers. I think there are opportunities to work across the aisle, but obviously I recognize that the election of President-elect Trump makes things much more difficult. I'm just going to have to be much more strategic and patient.
Another question that I have is when did you first know that you would be interested in serving as an elected public leader?
That's a great question. I was kind of that weird kid who used to sit in the back of class when everybody else was goofing off. I'd be reading Newsweek magazines, which was, publication that I don't know if anybody knows it today, but it was just a news magazine. So I was, in 6th, 7th grade, I always knew I was kind of interested in this stuff because, I grew up in a family where we were very engaged. My dad was somebody who used to he was a lawyer and used to take cases for the farm workers. At the time, Cesar Chavez was very active. The late Cesar Chavez was very active in our area. And he used to take cases that what they call pro bono, just because he cared a lot about the mission of the farm workers. And that helped to introduce me to some of the big challenges that so many in our community are facing. And the fact that was always part of our dinner time conversation was something that got me engaged. And so it was always just something I cared a lot about. And I didn't really know if I would ever have a pathway or whatever, but I knew I wanted to be involved in some way. And then I had the opportunity when I was 17 years old. I went off to college at Georgetown, which was a university in Washington, D.C. And I had a chance to work for Norm Mineta. It was just a wonderful role model for me. And, as a 17-year-old, you're just answering phones, maybe responding to correspondence from constituents. But it was a great opportunity for me just to see and watch what was happening. And at the time, Norm was leading this incredible effort, this bill called, well, I won't give you the full name, but what we all refer to it was the redress bill. It was an effort to try to reckon with the racist history of the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Norm himself and his family were interned as a Japanese American, and it was a very dark moment in our nation's history. And so he led this bill with a Republican, by the way, by the name of Alan Simpson in the Senate side, to compensate families and to essentially apologize to thousands of American citizens who were subjected to internment camps. I know you're all very aware of that history. And just being able to sort of get a front seat to watch all that was really transformative to me. I know I played only a very, very small role. I was the guy who was just responding to correspondence and answering phones. But to be part of something much bigger than myself was very exciting, and that was very motivating to me.
Anya?
Thank you for coming to speak with us today. And also congratulations on the election.
Thanks, Anya.
I was wondering, what are some policy issues that you think CAYC should focus on?
Well, that's a great question. I think what's important is for you to follow your passion, whatever that might be, because there is work to be done in all of those areas. I know it sounds to me that most of the commissions are really very locally focused. Is that right? Cities and counties. And so, you know, I know throughout California, homelessness is a crisis that's gripping all of our communities. I think that's, you know, when I was mayor of San Jose, we had a youth commission that was very active around particularly the issue of youth homelessness, because we were not, obviously we weren't doing enough for any of our unhoused residents, but particularly for teens and youth who were left unhoused. There were very unique needs that we were not attending to. And I think the youth commission's work helped to open our eyes and reorient some of our budgetary spending in ways that focused on youth. So I give that as an example because of the connection that our youth commission had to those members of our community who are suffering in that unique way. And I think you all understand better what a 16-year-old is grappling with than many of us do, whether it's around mental health or education or homes. There's a lot of insight you have, and I'd say focus on what is unique about what you bring to the table as a young adult or a teen that can help us better understand the needs of our community.
Rikhav?
Hello, my name is Rikhav. I'm a member of the San Mateo County Youth Commission. So at my school, we have like a try it culture, and I'm just wondering, in your career, like, have you ever had any doubt in, let's say, an outcome of an election, in a decision you've made, and what can, you know, what have you done, like, in your mind to just say, like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna pursue it? Like, I know that's a big block in so many like young people's mindset. Like they have doubt, you know, a little uncertain about some of the decisions they made. Like, what can you do, or what's your advice to young people on how to just pursue it?
Wow, that's a great question. I had lots and lots of doubts throughout the time I was on a city council and as mayor, and that's pretty inevitable because, look, if you don't have doubts, then you're not listening enough, and you're not really engaging enough with the community. Because the truth is, on virtually any big issue, there are people on the other side of whatever decision you make who have very good points to make and very serious concerns. And if you're not filled with some doubt in every decision, then you're putting your head in the sand. And so it's important to recognize that, you know, the boldest of decisions are not decisions that are made without fear. You should have some fear if you're making decisions that impact other people. And that's appropriate. I'll give one small example. You know, my first year on the city council in San Jose, I was just a council member representing the downtown district, and we had a lot of needs around affordable housing. A lot of families are getting pushed out. This is way back right before the Great Recession in 2007 when I came into office. And we had a big development that was being planned out by a future BART station, which now BART has since arrived there. But I was concerned there wasn't any affordable housing being planned in this development that was so close to a transit station, where we knew a lot of affordable housing would be needed because transit dependent residents overwhelmingly often struggle to make ends meet. And so I started pushing to figure out, well, why can't we have affordable housing be part of this development? And I learned that, well, if there's no legal requirement, there's nothing we can do. And so I started pushing on this idea around having a citywide requirement for what we call inclusionary housing. The fact that, you know, every project should have at least 15%. You know, you have different percentages depending on the market, for example, but some percentage of that housing should be rent restricted, so that, you know, lots of people who, they might be nurses or firefighters, or there might be folks, seniors, lots of folks who just can't afford to live in a wealthy, well, in a very expensive community like we have in the Bay Area. And I can't tell you, I had a lot of very unhappy people when I announced that I was going to try to lead an effort to require the city, third largest city in the state, to have a citywide inclusionary housing mandate. And the very people who supported me to get elected were a lot of folks in the real estate industry who were deeply, deeply opposed by this notion that they'd have to build affordable housing in every project. And I heard from a lot of supporters, they would never support me again, and they were very angry about it. And you better believe I had a lot of doubt. And ultimately what it came down to is I had to ask myself the question, look, if somebody else was filling this position, lots of people could just kind of vote the way that conventional wisdom tells you to vote, keep your head down and, don't take any bullets. But the only reason why I'm in this job is because I thought I could do something a little better or a little different. And ultimately, if they vote me out, I can go get another job. That's okay. And you have to be kind of content with the notion that you can always get another job. And if you don't feel confident in that, you shouldn't run for public office, because otherwise you'll just make a lot of really bad decisions that keep you in office and ultimately don't move the ball forward. So I ultimately decided to go ahead. I feel very lucky that we managed to get the votes together. Actually, all those developers challenged us in court in a case that went all the way up to the California Supreme Court, and actually the U.S. Supreme Court issued it. It's called a denial certiorari, but you went all the way up to the Supreme Court, challenged us. It took us 6 years to implement it, but we finally got it in place.
Harper.
Hi, Congressman-Elect Liccardo. Thank you very much for being here.
Please call me Sam. Thank you.
Earlier, you were talking about the challenges you anticipate of entering into a polarized Congress. And if anything, this election has demonstrated that our country is more polarized than ever. How can we as youth work to understand opposite perspectives and attempt to mend these divides in our local communities and across the country?
I think that you have a unique platform as being the keepers of our planet and our country for the next several generations. And I think, frankly, 17-year-olds in red and blue states have a lot more in common with each other than 57-year-olds do, because of your mutual interests, having a planet you can actually live on, and a country that is going to have democratic institutions that are enduring. And I'm sorry if I'm talking in abstractions, but I think about, for example, the peaceful transfer of power and how critically that is, how important that is. Let's see here. Y'all still with me? Did I lose you?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. I might have a little problem with connection. So I think to the extent that you're able to build a network of youth organizations nationally around things you care about. I think about, for example, you think about the really divisive issues, like let's take guns, for example. That's, one of the most divisive issues, right? And, I led efforts in San Jose that I know I'd never be able to get passed in Congress. But there are things that actually Republicans and Democrats agree on around gun regulation. Let me just give you a couple examples. You do polling, you find out the majority of Americans, more than 70%, support things like universal background checks and support restrictions on ammunition purchases and background checks on ammunition purchases, and support things like red flag laws that enable, family members or coworkers to be able to notify a court when someone's with a gun, who owns a gun is having a mental health episode or maybe an addiction issue that needs to be addressed so we can get the gun away from somebody who's really likely to be dangerous. And so those are the kinds of things where I think a youth connectivity could be really powerful in mobilizing action and voices in ways that can put pressure. It's not going to change the mind of somebody who's really dead set against it in a very red state. But there's a lot of my colleagues in Congress that represent purple districts. And a lot of maybe suburban voters, and maybe they had a really tough fight in this last election. And mobilizing Republicans and independent voters who share some of those views around, hey, we could actually pass some sensible restrictions that don't take away anybody's gun rights. Those are the kinds of things that I think are great opportunities for young adults to engage in, to start to build a network. let me throw out one more example, and then I promise I'll stop. The last example I'll just give you is, I think, you know, we look at the influence of money in politics, and I think everybody would agree it's horrible. And I'm guessing lots of folks on this screen would probably support the constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, some of the Supreme Court decisions that have really protected campaign spending and fundraising in a way like it's protected speech under the First Amendment. And I think many of us don't believe it should be protected speech. Well, you know, that's an area where Republicans and Democrats actually agree a lot on, and having deep youth engagement to start a movement at the grassroots could be very, very powerful thing. We know it's not going to get done this year, but it's something we can build on for several years and really start to change the dynamic in a big way over the next several years. For campaign finance fund. Thank you for the question.
Do you have time for one final question?
Yeah, sure. I'm sitting in the car, I'm not going anywhere.
Winnie?
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. I'm Winnie and I'm from the San Francisco Youth Commission. So earlier I know you mentioned about like just receiving criticism and doubt while being in public office. And I know as a youth also engaged in civics, that's something that a lot of people direct towards us. They don't believe in the work that we do. So what do you think the best way to handle that kind of criticism in a constructive way is, even when it doesn't seem like we're being taken seriously?
Hey, Winnie, could you criticism one more time so I make sure I hear it clearly?
Yeah. So my question was about addressing criticism constructively, even when youth aren't being taken seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, boy. That's a really important question. Certainly, I felt my own sense of frustration when I tried to engage as a young adult in several initiatives. You know, this is actually a great, I'd be interested in other people's answers to this question too, because I'm not sure I have a great answer. Let me just tell you what I started doing when I was mayor. And maybe you could use San Jose as an example, or, you know, other communities that maybe are doing it better. I was frustrated that we didn't know what the Youth Commission was saying or doing when we were making decisions I knew had impacts on youth. For example, around education programs and initiatives or parks or other things I knew youth had a particular perspective on, you know, whether we're going to build a skate park or we're going to build a soccer field, for example, just as a very simple example. And so I started requiring that staff included summaries of youth commission's votes and conclusions in every staff report that came to us through our different committees to the full council. So that way, everybody on the council knew at least what the vote was on the youth commission and what were the critical salient points that were raised. And I think that your communication made the youth commission much more relevant because we could see what they were saying and they knew their decisions actually were getting to us. And that's a very simple thing. We did other things, like, for example, in the budget process, we had the youth commissioners come and testify to us around, and we always told them, hey, pick your top 2 or 3 priorities, because we're not going to be here all day, right? We need to really get to it. And I felt that when the youth commissioners were very strategic in identifying those 1 or 2 or 3 priorities, they're much more effective. Because, you know, that often happens when you get folks together, they have 17 priorities and nothing gets done. And so that process of both engaging folks and then putting the work on them to really prioritize and be strategic, I found was much more effective for them and for us. I'd be interested if other folks have better ideas in answering your question, Winnie, because I'm not sure I gave it the best answer.
Well, thank you so much for spending your free time with us and for your inspiring words. And we're so excited that you are representing us in Congress. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you, Rohan. And thanks to each of you. Thank you for the very good questions. And most importantly, thank you for your energy and your investment in time and your mind share. We need you so much right now. And so I'm grateful that bright young people are willing to engage in a meaningful way in local communities, because this is the real opportunity you have for real impact is in your own backyard, your own community. And it's a great way for you to learn and obviously for community leaders to hear directly from you. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you,
again.
Sam. Hey, Rohan, I know you're anxious to get to your agenda, but it was such an interesting conversation with Congressman-Elect Liccardo, Sam. May I just build on that just for a few seconds, what he said? I think for youth to have a voice, it's just really important to vote. Even if you're too young to vote, you can still help young people register to vote. And once the young people get to be a reliable voting bloc, right now in American politics and local politics, the most reliable voting blocs are seniors. So they really get listened to. When youth start to be a reliable, large voting bloc, elected officials will listen to their priorities.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Krolik. So now we are going to progress to our first topic of discussion today, and an emphasis in our vision and efforts of the CAYC, which is our best practices on how to start and maintain a youth commission. This is important because this is important for us to have people like Congressman Speier and Congressman-Elect Liccardo representing us as their constituents. And we need to have civically engaged youth now and uplift youth voice that represents all of our viewpoints. So we will now be hearing from Penny Reed, a high school senior and leader in the Burlingame Youth Advisory Commission, followed by Hillsborough City Manager Doug Davis, who has been instrumental in launching our Hillsborough Youth Commission while navigating the Brown Act.
Great. Thank you so much, Rohan, and just a quick thank you to everyone that's spoken here this morning. So like he said, today I'm going to be talking about best practices for youth commissions, as well as some tips on how to start and maintain them. Echoing what everyone has said here today, youth commissions are a vital part of government because they give youths an opportunity to engage in the civic process, share their unique perspectives, and contribute fresh, innovative ideas. Organizations can create policies that better reflect the needs and aspirations of younger generations, which fosters a sense of empowerment and responsibility among youth. Additionally, youth advisory commissions promote diversity in leadership and encourage a more inclusive approach to addressing current and future challenges. It's an amazing way to meet other like-minded youths from your own community and work together to help your town. Moving on to my next slide. I have been on the Burlingame Youth Commission for 3 years and have learned some key components which make my YAC so successful. One of the main things is that we conduct an interview process. As long as our YAC has been running, we have had a number of 13 members, and I feel this has been the perfect member in order to have a diverse representation of viewpoints and experiences. As members graduate or leave, we will hold a series of interviews at the start of our term in August, and these are wonderful to grasp an accurate sense of, first of all, how dedicated the applicant is, what experiences they have that could add to our advisory board, as well as an overall vibe of the candidate to see if they would work well in our group's environment. In youth commissions, it's vital to have members who feel very passionate about improving the community and who will spend real effort in making that come true. Along with increasing competitiveness of college applications, sometimes people are just looking for another activity to add to their resume, and holding an interview process helps weed those people out. Another key component is mandatory meetings and events. Personally, my YAC tries to be very organized, and we keep a Google Drive with all the information for the year. We hold monthly 2-hour meetings where we discuss past and future events, as well as hear from adults to help with our leadership skills and specialists to learn more about our specific initiatives. In addition, we work with the Parks and Rec government, dedicating ourselves to a certain amount of volunteer events for the year. Some of these are mandatory, and they foster not only team building among our own YAC members, but also important experiences with the government and volunteer work. Another important part of our mandatory meetings is that each meeting, people will volunteer to either lead the meeting or act as secretary and take notes, which is a good way to create leadership skills in our own group. Another important component of my YAC is our clear mission or initiative every year. Diving more into the details of the actual work we do, at the start of each year, we brainstorm different initiatives that are important for our specific town. For example, a few years ago in my town, there were a series of hate crimes at the local public high schools. At our meeting, someone brought this issue to light, and we then decided to center our initiative around belonging in our community and combating that hate. Once we agree on an initiative, we then present to the Parks and Recreation Council to grant permission and subsequently start to plan out possible events we could host or other things we could do to carry that initiative out. Once clear goals have been made, we will create a series of subcommittees, and people can join the ones that interest them most. This has proved to be very helpful, as everyone has a specific set of tasks they need to complete, and hopefully they are more passionate about these tasks. To give an example, my YAC's initiative this year is life skills, and the subcommittee I've taken part in is sustainability. So my peers and I have been working to come up with important sustainable related life skills to teach the public of. Next, I will be going into a few successful events we have held and some that we continue to hold. The first successful event is called Kids Night Out. Parents can drop their kids off at our community center for a few hours, and we run them through monthly themed activities and games throughout the night. This event has been so successful for a few reasons. The first is that we continue it throughout the year. Every month, we hold one Kids Night Out on the first Friday of the month. This allows the community members to have a reliant event they know will happen continuously. Because of this, we often have many returning members, which keeps our numbers strong. The other successful thing we have recently incorporated is adding in an additional dinner for a price. The optional charge helps us not only fundraise for our own YAC's needs, which gives us an opportunity to spend more money on other events and things we need in the future. The last thing which makes this event so popular is our own enthusiasm. YAC members bring energy and excitement for the kids, making sure to plan fun activities and games. The kids can feel that energy, which helps them to have even more fun. To them, every month is a mystery, with exciting new events that we curate around a theme. For example, in October, we held a Halloween-themed Kids Night Out, where we had pumpkin carving, movie watching, and a mystery object where the kids had to feel inside a pumpkin and guess what was inside. What seemed like brains was actually just spaghetti. Because we are creative with the different activities, we are able to keep the total price low, not spending too much of our funds on this fun activity. The second successful event is a self-defense workshop. Last August, my youth commission hosted a free self-defense workshop at the local community center, which offered a valuable learning experience for residents of all ages, but catered to young adults. We partnered with a local self-defense studio, and the event brought together over 35 participants who are all eager to learn essential safety techniques. Attendees practiced a range of skills, from basic maneuver strategies to tips for staying aware and preventing dangerous situations. The event was successful, with many participants highlighting how empowered they felt after the session. Our instructors were praised for their engaging teaching style an ability to make the techniques accessible to people with no prior knowledge. One of the key factors behind this strong turnout was our promotional strategy. We designed digital flyers and posted them on Instagram, which played a big role in attracting participants. We also posted flyers throughout the community, which helped spread the word to those who may not be as active online. Another thing which proved to be so popular is that many people in our community were actually interested in learning about self-defense. I've learned that when creating events for the public, it's important to keep in mind how to get people to engage and show up. I think if we had made simply a presentation on self-defense, less people would have come. But on the other hand, the workshop allowed people to get in a bit of exercise while at the same time learning a unique and important skill. Another key component for this self-defense exercise was that we were able to have the specialist studio come free of charge. This is important because, like I may have mentioned before, our personal YAC doesn't have very deep funds, but by communicating to people in our own community, we were able to get free professional work. For other YACs who are looking to host similar events, we did learn some valuable lessons along the way. While the turnout was great, we recognized that we could do more to attract specifically younger participants. While our social media efforts were present, we hope to increase engagement with teens by incorporating more in-person promotions at schools. Another strategy is working with school administrators and using extra credit or other initiatives for students to attend. In addition, we could have catered the actual promotion to young adults and students. For example, with many young adults going off to college or gaining more freedom in general, self-defense is a very useful tool to have along with increasing independence. For those of you who are here today who do not yet have a youth commission, but are interested in starting one, we have compiled a few tips on how to do so. The first is to research and learn. Conduct research on existing youth commissions, especially the youth commissions in your area, to understand their structures, functions, and successes. Identify what has worked well in other communities, and consider adapting those practices to suit your local context. You can also refer to the California Association of Youth Commissions website blog to find other youth commissions' shared best practices. This step will also be completed just by attending the Zoom. Now and throughout the next few hours, you'll gain vital insight on the workings and specific initiatives of YACs across California, which can inspire ideas for your own youth commissions. The next step is to define purpose and goals. You should identify the issues or areas of focus that the commission will address, such as education, community development, youth engagement, community service, etc. While it's great to be expansive, we recommend going through the exercise of prioritizing the list to 3 items. The reason is that you will need to efficiently communicate the why for your proposed youth commission to multiple audiences. Having a compact narrative is essential for these conversations. Once you have your youth commission up and running, you will have endless opportunities to expand your agenda. The next is to engage stakeholders. We suggest reaching out to and introducing your idea of creating a youth commission to 1 or 2 council members, and then working closely with them to propose a youth commission to the city council for approval. It's helpful to connect with community leaders, educators, parents, and local organizations to garner support for the youth commission. You can explain the benefits of having a platform for youth involvement and address any concerns. In addition, find an advisor from your city council's government who will act as a liaison to the city council once the youth commission is up and running. For example, your city manager or another member of your city manager's office. If wanted, you can also create a steering committee with 1 to 2 other motivated teens who will also want to serve on your youth commission. Your steering committee could serve many important roles, including further outlining the goals of your youth commission, conducting interviews, selecting members for the youth commission, and as well as leading the youth commission during the year. The next step is to seek local government improvement. At a city council meeting, you can officially present your proposal to local government officials, such as city council members or school board representatives. You should highlight the potential benefits of a youth commission for the community and address any questions or concerns that they may have. On our website, we have a presentation template that you can customize if you'd like, as well as an accompanying script for your proposal. After you've been approved, you should create an application process. We recommend a hybrid process of creating an online application using Google Forms, but it can also be helpful to have paper forms available in the local town hall. We also recommend that applications include demographics, which will aid in ensuring diversity. On our website, we also have an example of some possible application questions for first-round candidates. For example, one question could be, our youth commission strives to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does DEI mean to you? After narrowing down your list of candidates to 15 to 20 students, you should begin the interview round of the application process to see how your candidates interact with others and then finalize the list. The last step to start a youth commission is to select your members. Make sure that you're considering many factors when selecting your members, whether it be for their interview round or for the final youth commission. Keep in mind each applicant's answers during both the written application and the interview, as well as their personality and behavior as observed during the interview. It is also important to look at their activities and extracurriculars because you need to make sure they will be able to fully commit to the youth commission. The California Association of Youth Commissions is dedicated to expanding the amount of YACs throughout California. With my past experiences on YACs, as well as tips on how to start a new youth commission, we hope that this goal will be met. Next, we will hear from Hillsborough City Manager Doug Davis, who will give us some additional advice on the process of creating a youth commission.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Rohan, thank you for the invite. I have a couple of questions that I received just via email that I'm going to go over. And by the way, Penny, that was an excellent presentation. I think as far as how to start a youth commission, you pretty much gave the exact pathway that is needed to make that work. So I'll add just a little bit of my own insight to it and then talk a little bit about what's unique here with our particular Hillsborough one. On the starting of the youth committee, if you don't already have a youth committee, I think one of the key factors you're going to need is 2 or 3 individuals within your schools in your age range that are very interested in getting started. And just as Penny said, at that point, you want to identify whether it be a city council member or perhaps somebody from the city manager's office, you're interested in moving forward, because you really will at a certain point need to have the cooperation of the city that you're in order to put together the committee. So that would be the additional thing that I would add in there. And there was another question that asked about the sustainability of a youth committee. And I think that's a really important question, because you can have a group of motivated young people that are really interested in doing something, but that motivation has to continue on, right? Just by nature of what a youth committee is, people are going to time out of it as it moves forward. So the idea of having a super well run, motivated group that works hard together for a couple of years and then times out as they move on into college and further on in life without passing that down to others is some of the problems that I've seen with other youth committees as far as not continuing. So it's not just about having the committee and managing it. It's about how do you identify who's going to be the future you. So as much energy as Rohan and brings to our youth committee and as much talent as we've got in there, that is all for naught if we don't find the next people that are going to take over those positions. So I can't stress enough that it's from day one, very similar to any government. Even my job here from day one is you need to start identifying who's going to be the next you. And I think a lot of youth committees do a great job on attacking issues and showing value to the community. And sometimes they'll forget that they have to identify those young people in their schools right now that they can pull into the program. So that's what I would talk about a little bit on sustainability. I had another question that said, how did I become involved with regards to the Brown Act? So I think I'm preaching to the choir here. Most of you are familiar with the Brown Act and the rules surrounding it, which mostly involved elected officials and having serial meetings or having incidents where we have too many elected officials in a room discussing a topic. And then a big one is just having elected officials what we call opining or giving an opinion on a subject before it comes to city council where they can discuss it in a group in a public venue. So the difficulty with having a council-run youth committee is that every meeting we do would then be subject to the Brown Act. And recently that's been meaning having a quorum, enough of you there from the board in order to have a meeting. If we don't have enough of you there, we have to cancel the meeting. The other is the fact that we have to post it publicly and allow the public to come in and interject into the meeting and have public comment, which we do anyway, even though ours is not a Brown Act committee, we still have public comment because that's important. But if it limits you on your ability to have hybrid meetings a lot as well. For those of you who use Zoom and in person together, it makes it a little more cumbersome and a little more difficult to pull that off. By having it under the city manager's office, where we can just have a normal meeting that's an advisory committee to myself, and then I'm the conduit to the city council. And it really, and honestly, and then looking at both formats, it doesn't change much. I think if you have it under the city manager's office and you have it as a non-Brown Act committee, it allows you to have a lot more freedom with regards to your meetings, but you still get that same access to the city council. I would say most every city manager at least should have a very close relationship with their city council. And I will tell you that if you have a youth commission within your jurisdiction, it's one of the things that you want to show off. It's one of the things that you're proud to have. It's one of those things you want to get in front of city council. So that access to the city council and those community meetings is going to happen whichever format you have. I think having it as a non-Brown compliant committee gives you a lot more freedom and ability to sort of manage the meetings the way you want to. Another one, and this one, I will say that I've had this question probably more than any of them, is how do you incorporate the youth committee into your city budget? So I'll talk a little bit about two different types of ideas here. The youth commission, as far as a budgeted item, we have a certain amount of budget items that are within our what we call line items. So every year we fill our line items with a certain amount of money that we think it's going to take to run an individual program. So that money is kind of already there, but it's not really earmarked for anything specific other than either the Youth Commission, or in our case, we have the CCAC, Citizens Communication Advisory Committee, and several other committees that we have a line item budget for. Where youth committees are looking for a certain amount of money, and this is what I discourage youth committees from trying to do, to come in the beginning and say that we need X number of dollars for this year. And that just as a blanket statement, we need this amount of money for this part of the year. It's hard to work that one out. In government, money only has one purpose. It's to serve the community. It's just a tool. That's all it is. And we have a limited amount of it. And we're going to use every dime we can to serve our community in the best way we can. So by that means, the youth committee needs to show that here's the value we're going to add to a certain idea or certain project. And that's how the budget comes into play. And I'll give an example. Every year in February, our council gets together along with our city management group, and we discuss what we think are going to be our prime topics for the upcoming fiscal year. So those are posted, they're on our website. We have a top 5 that are in there, as well as a bunch of other ones that are in there as well. And while the youth committee together as a group may have things that they're very passionate about wanting to do, a lot of times I notice they're much bigger ideas. Like if you come to me and just say, we're interested in trying to solve the homeless problem. Okay, that's a very broad, it's important, but it's a very broad thing and very hard to try to wrap your hands around. And as a single jurisdiction, it's very difficult to determine how can we contribute money to this in order to help out. Now, if you had a specific homeless problem that was occurring within your city or your jurisdiction, and it was identified by your city council that we want to address this, and then you were put together a program saying in this particular area, we want to do public outreach and try to work to solve this particular issue, that's where you're going to see city funds that start to get involved. So I would recommend that you, of course, it's important to talk to your elected officials, talk to your city management, and also, look online. Almost every city, if you look on their website, they're going to have a list of priorities for what they're looking to accomplish in that fiscal year. Find some of those priorities that line up with the passions of the people within your committee, and then put some effort to come up with some ideas. And if you come forward and say, hey, Mr. City Manager or Mrs. City Manager, we have a certain plan to solve or to help with this particular engagement, and we see that it is also one of the priorities of the city. Well, that's gold for anybody in city management, right? Because now I have a group of people that are energetic, that want to come in and help us with an issue that we've already identified that we want to work on. And I always say, never limit your dollar amount. I think people get hung up in the amounts of money things are, and that's not, I mean, we do projects that are millions and millions of dollars, and we do projects that are a few $1,000s. So never limit you don't want to ever put a ceiling or a basement on the budget, because that value will be determined by the city council. So at a certain point, if we get a project together and working closely with your city government, if you put together a proposal or an idea, and then we help you craft that into a presentation, and we do some public outreach with it, and eventually you'll find yourself standing at the podium in front of the city council describing the idea that you have and the benefit that it's going to bring. At that point, you will see that city councils and city management are willing to budget whatever the costs are, if they're within reason, to get that project completed. And so I think that those are at least, unless you have some others, Rohan, those are some of the questions that I got via email, but I'm happy to answer any other questions if you guys have any.
Yeah, thank you so much, Penny and Mr. Davis. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you guys for your time. I think this is a great thing you're all doing. And Rohan, thanks for all your effort.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much to Penny and Mr. Davis again for a great presentation. Just wanted to remind you all that the best practices toolkit that Penny talked about with the templates can be found on our website. If you just type in California Association of Youth Commissions, it's the first result. So next we will be transitioning to fentanyl, talking about the epidemic of fentanyl poisoning and its access to its antidote, naloxone or Narcan. So here's the agenda of my kind of segment. And to start off, we will be hearing from San Mateo County Behavioral Health Clinical Supervisor Mary Taylor Fullerton. Ms. Fullerton has been with the San Mateo County for over 16 years, and she created the Integrated Medicated Assisted Treatment Team to help with opioid and alcohol abuse. 2 years ago, she led the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors study session reviewing the fentanyl crisis in San Mateo County, and she supported us when Hillsborough put on its first Fentanyl Awareness Day in partnership with State Senator Josh Becker. She's also volunteered to serve on the California Association of Youth Commissions Advisory Board. Thank you so much for coming, Ms. Fullerton.
Thank you guys for having me, and good morning, everyone. I'm truly honored to be here, and can't think of a more appropriate and uplifting way to cap this week. Several of you have mentioned kind of just the difficult emotions and roller coaster we've been on a bit politically this week. And so to be here today and to be invited to talk about something I'm really passionate about, but in particular with youth, just looking ahead at whether it's the next 4 years, the next 40 years, it's helping me feel more inspired and engaged. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. So I'm Mary, and I'm going to go through a couple slides just to set the stage about what we're talking about. Why in the middle of this inaugural fall session are we talking about fentanyl and access? And so just to call into place a little back, I know we're in 2024. I know this slide says 2023. This is the last year that we have data from overdose. It takes a while to report and collect. And so there's some preliminary data coming out in 2024. But I wanted to start out by highlighting something about the opioid epidemic that you may be hearing or seeing in the news, especially recently, the last 4 6 months or so. There's been reports about the drug overdose deaths are decreasing. And that is a good thing. That is a good thing. I think it was Congresswoman Speier talked about misinformation, and the reality is we are still in an epidemic with opioid-related overdose deaths, and the fastest growing demographic is youth. So that's kind of level setting the stage of why we're talking about this issue. And so there was this tiny little decrease in 2023 from 111,000 to 107,000. That's what is counted, reported, and recorded. Does not include overdose deaths that were not that didn't go through autopsy or coroner examiner reports. But this was the first time we saw a decline since 2018. So while that is good news, and people attribute the decline to lots of different things, including the access and availability of naloxone, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we still remain in this place where 75% were attributed to synthetic opioids, namely fentanyl, nationwide. And so as we're watching this opioid deaths start to slightly decrease or level in many areas, we're seeing stimulant-related deaths increase, and that's things like methamphetamines, cocaine, so stimulant substances. We're also seeing this shift in demographics, which bringing the equity lens into this conversation is really important. I live and work in San Mateo County. I've worked with the county for going on almost 17 years now. I've been working in the drug addiction field for about 22 years. And we're seeing this change in demographics, specifically with opioids and specifically with opioid-related deaths, where marginalized communities and particularly men, African-American men and Latino communities are impacted by overdose death. And that goes into a whole lot of pieces around mental health, around healthcare access and equity and insurance and eligibility, things like that. But just kind of setting the stage for the national overview. We can go on to the next slide. Thanks. So we mentioned fentanyl. Rohan mentioned the Fentanyl Awareness Day, which was a really successful event to kind of help educate and bring together really important voices around what's happening with opioids in the community. This is happening in every county in California. So no matter which youth commission you're part of, there are reported upticks of opioid overdose deaths and fentanyl poisoning. It's important here to talk about fentanyl, which is a synthetic opioid. It's powerful. It's 50 times more powerful than heroin, 100 times more potent than morphine. It is also used routinely in surgery to this day. And so it's an FDA-approved medication for acute pain. And so it can be safe when prescribed medically, used, administered, managed, and supervised. It's often used with advanced cancer patients, terminal illness, surgical procedures, but it is also manufactured illegally by the illicit drug trade. And the reason for that is very cheap to make, it produces a very intense euphoria, and it is added to illicit substances. And this is where the unintentional death and poisoning comes into play. So it's not just that individuals are seeking fentanyl, which they are. The team that I work with at the emergency department in San Mateo County, we see this every day. We see individuals who are using fentanyl on a daily basis to maintain whether it's pain, whether it's related to mental health conditions, addiction issues. Too much fentanyl or too much of any opioid can cause respiratory repression, depression, and difficulties breathing, which increases the risk for overdose and death. And so what we're seeing, and we can go on to the next slide, what we're seeing is this shift in how people are using substances. And this is where it's affecting youth. UCLA did a report January, February of this year, of 2024, looking at categories of youth drug use or substance use. And so even though the numbers of youth using substances is decreasing, so youth are overall using substances less than they had in 2018 and 2015, but death rates are increasing. And this is a two-part piece here. So there's this old category of use. So my generation and some of probably your parents or grandparents' generation, everyone has experimented, people experiment, kids experiment with substances, whether it's a cigarette, whether it's a sip of alcohol, whether it's experimenting with methamphetamines, cocaine, heroin, whatever's available in their community with their peers. And the initial experimentation, the initial user that follow this trajectory or timeline where they might become an occasional recreational user, they might have opportunities for cessation. So moderation of the substance, maybe they only smoke marijuana a couple times a week or just when they're out in social, maybe it goes down to once a month, just around certain occasions. And they can age out of risky behavior, or intervention can help set the path, or can become a habitual user or a dependent user. With fentanyl and with the landscape of what we're seeing, the reason why we're having these really high overdose deaths, and you can go to the next slide, is because of this influx of fentanyl in the illicit drug market. So one of the areas where we're seeing fentanyl largely now, which we didn't even 3 years ago, at the start of the pandemic, we didn't see it as much on social media, but now, the pandemic brought a lot of great things. One of the things we're seeing is you can order almost anything and have it delivered to your door, oftentimes within a day or same day. And one of the things that Snapchat and Instagram and other platforms, social media platforms have done is found ways to, people can order substances, order drugs online. And so sometimes it's an Adderall or a Ritalin or a stimulant medication to help cram or study for a test all night. Sometimes it's an anti-anxiety, or known as a benzodiazepine, like a Xanax, a Klonopin, Valium. And when you're ordering these substances online, the pill that you're getting very often is not the actual pharmaceutical grade pill, and it's manufactured illicitly in a synthetic way, and it contains fentanyl or some other synthetic opioid. And so the messaging here with the new category of use, with the influx of fentanyl since in San Mateo County, 2017, 2018, we started seeing our numbers go way up. One pill can kill because of the lethality, because of how potent fentanyl is. Experimenting sometimes can lead to overdose, the respiratory depression, and to death. So overdose doesn't always mean death, and we'll get to the antidote in just a minute. But this shift in how people have access substances is very significant, because it directly is a result of just the wide availability of social media and being able to order things and get things online. And is the fastest growing overdose impacted age group is youth. And so just to call that out again, that there are individuals that are dying at all ages of fentanyl overdose deaths or opioid related overdose deaths, and the fastest growing group is youth. And so California reports on 10 to 24 years of age, but there is a group, young adult and older teen, that because of experimentation, trying one pill, trying a Xanax, or trying something for a different intent, can lead to an accidental poisoning or an accidental unintentional overdose. An overdose can lead to death. We can go to the next slide, please, which these are the signs of poisoning. So I'm talking about what does it look like when someone is poisoned by fentanyl or has overdosed on a substance with opioids. There's very likely not responding. And so you might, we hear this with, we had a young person we met last week at the hospital. They were 22 in college, and came across a roommate, and they were, like this. They were not responding to shake, touch, calling their name, slow breathing. That's the respiratory depression. So their breath is very slow. They might have like a gurgling, and that's literally the lungs and the heart trying to get air. Very often blue fingertips, blue appearance on the lips, cold or clammy, and tiny or pinpoint pupils. That historically has been a hallmark of opioid use, is the pinpoint pupils, but now with the mixed substances out there, so the mix of the stimulants, whether it's cocaine, methamphetamine, other stimulant medications, Ritalin, Adderall, Strattera, those medications, now that we know that they're highly mixed with fentanyl in the illicit drug market and online market, we often tell people that the pupils is, they can be dilated, so it can be opposite. But this is what it would look like if somebody was poisoned by fentanyl or other substances. And you can go to the next slide, thank you. And what you do if someone has overdosed, this is your crash course in how to reverse an overdose and what naloxone is and why it's effective. This is a much longer presentation, But this is your, like, the highlights, the key points here. And so naloxone is a FDA-approved medication. It's been around for decades. And what it does is Narcan is the brand's name. Naloxone removes the opioid that's attached to the receptor, which is causing that respiratory depression. It binds to the receptor for roughly half an hour to an hour, sometimes over an hour, and it doesn't let the opioid back on. And so the individual can regain breath, and the heart starts beating and circulation starts happening again, and they regain consciousness. So an overdose does not have to equal death. And with my team, because we work with a lot of individuals that are experimenting, that are using substances in significant ways for long periods of time, we are supplying naloxone widely. I saw Nancy Magee on here earlier. The San Mateo County Office of Education published a toolkit, which is available online. It's a great resource to understand more about this area, but they are essentially training and stocking naloxone on school campuses in the event of an overdose emergency. We can go to the next slide. So naloxone is not a controlled substance. It's not a drug. It looks like this little nasal spray. That is not an active link on the slide here, but I don't know if you're doing a resource page for this, but it's the state of Maryland has a 30-second tutorial on how to use naloxone. That's great. So there are these 5 steps. You're shouting and shaking the individual like, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? You're calling 911, and you're administering naloxone. It's just like if you've ever used a nasal spray, Afrin, or anything like that, that's what it is. You just put your that little cap end up the tip of a nostril, and you depress the plunger. A little spray lets out, the naloxone is released into the brain, it kicks the opioids off the receptor, binds to the receptor, and it provides the body and brain the chance to kind of recover and regain, and that's the reversal of an overdose. So that's preventing death. And the folks that we work with very often, one of our mantras is that it's really hard to engage someone on a path of recovery or in making healthy choices if they're dead. And so a huge role that naloxone plays is helping prevent death and keeping people alive in order to engage them in their version of recovery. We can go to the next slide. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Fullerton. Now we next slide. So yeah, just reiterating a little bit of what Ms. Fullerton talked about. We're in the midst of a public health crisis. Over 500 teenagers have died from fentanyl poisoning in California since 2021, and in the United States, fentanyl is the leading cause of death in people aged 18 to 45 years old. And social media has made counterfeit pills and unknowingly fentanyl-laced drugs alarmingly accessible to teens, especially on Snapchat, as she mentioned, which fuels a rise in accidental exposure. Teens' mental health struggles have worsened by the pandemic, heightening their vulnerability to substance use, with fentanyl making even causal use dangerously lethal, and the mantra of one pill can kill even more important. So raising awareness and education are the keys to combating the fentanyl poisoning epidemic. So after forming the CAYC, we met Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Felsher, who's the director of the Stanford Reach Lab, who has assembled a free fentanyl awareness curriculum regarding fentanyl and its antidote, Narcan. She also now serves on our advisory board, and we have distributed this curriculum to all California towns and youth commissions via email, and is also available on our website under fentanyl resources. The website also has links to the Hillsborough Youth Commission Fentanyl Awareness Day video and program, as well as links to Songs for Charlie and the 9/11 Good Samaritan Law. So as I mentioned, a way we tried to elevate the fentanyl awareness in our town is by hosting a fentanyl awareness day. We identified that this was a gap in teen knowledge through an anonymous online teen mental health survey, and that showed that 4/5 of all of the teens in our town did not know how to use Narcan, which was striking. We sought to educate our teens and families on the one pill can kill mantra. And we partnered with our California State Senator Josh Becker and held a workshop where we learned from community experts on education, public health, medicine, parent advocacy, and police. And unfortunately, we learned that this is in every community, even when you least expect it. So now I'm going to be talking about some state fentanyl legislation that's been super pivotal lately. So California has been a leader in passing legislation to combat fentanyl poisoning. Melanie's Law, passed in 2023, mandates school safety plans requiring prevention, response, training, education, and awareness to prevent and respond to youth fentanyl overdoses. This bill aligns with the Budget Act of 2023 for the state of California to ensure that every middle school and high school in California can easily access and afford Narcan. This bill received bipartisan legislative support and no opposition, which shows its importance. Another piece of legislation is AB 2429, which was passed in July 2024 and mandates that starting in the 2026-27 school year, school districts and California charter schools, which require a health education course for graduation, must also include comprehensive instruction on the dangers of fentanyl use. This aims to combat the rising fentanyl public health crisis by educating students about the risks and consequences associated with fentanyl and other synthetic opioids. The key to preventing fentanyl poisoning is education about counterfeit pills, like Miss Fullerton talked about, and that fentanyl can be mixed with other drugs or laced without the user's knowledge. Finally, it's integral to recognize a fentanyl overdose and learn how to administer the Narcan nasal spray to reverse overdoses because that can save lives. So, while schools can have access to Narcan, students and families should have access to Narcan as well. Santa Clara County serves as a model of free access to Narcan. This was introduced by Santa Clara County Board Supervisor Cindy Chavez. And now, because of her work, Narcan is available to anyone over the age of 12 who requests it via email or phone since December 2023. And this is modeled after the federal government's distribution of COVID tests to people in the community. And while libraries in Santa Clara County are stocked, not everyone feels comfortable picking up the Narcan out of fear and stigma. So that's another thing that we need to work to change in terms of combating the fentanyl epidemic. So building on that model, I would love for all of us at the CAYC to work toward pursuing Narcan for all students and families in California. And this proposal includes increased awareness, which will lead to the decreased stigma and access to Narcan. And this is one of the main goals that I really envisioned when I tried to found the CAYC, which was that the youth commissions that are on this call and that have joined the CAYC, when we collaborate together, our voice is going to be much louder and we're going to have a lot more influence on a state level in Sacramento than our individual youth commissions trying to accomplish different things in our local jurisdictions. And so if we can collaborate on policy affecting positive change in state public policy together, we can do a lot more collaborating together than trying to do it individually. So, do you guys have any questions for me or Miss Fullerton? Great. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about is social media in schools. Governor Newsom just signed some controversial legislation on September 23rd of this year, the Phone Free Schools Act, or Assembly Bill 3216. which aims to enhance academic performance and mental health by limiting smartphone use during school hours, and mandates that all California K-12 school districts implement policies to restrict or ban smartphone use during the school day by July 1st, 2026. So here to discuss this is Superintendent of San Mateo County Schools, Nancy Magee. Previously an English teacher, she is dedicated to the equity and self-centered education, student-centered education, and she's the founding and current leader of the Coalition of Safe Schools and Communities. And we will also be hearing from Ben Michaels, a 3-year member of the Belmont Youth Advisory Commission. Okay.
Oh, hello everyone. I'm Ben, and like Rohan said, I'm a 3-year member on Belmont CAYC, and this is my topic that I'm pretty passionate about. So, social media, it's a business, and the whole point of these social media apps is to keep you on the app as long as possible so they can show you more ads and get more money. So it's in their best interest to make it as addictive as possible, which is like pretty bad. But the negative effects on teens, as you can see, like 2+ hours on social media is linked to mental health decline, is linked to problems like depression and anxiety. With social media comes the experience of FOMO, or fear of missing out, and cyberbullying. And both of those are really big problems because they both cause mental health problems that are increasingly important in today's teens. And too much before bed, even like screen time too much before bed, leads to a sleep quality decline. And sleep is like the best time for growing and helping your brain move stuff from short-term memory to long-term memory. So it's actually impacting your academic performance as well, with you not being able to recall things quickly. So next slide, please. So just like a quick thing, I'm sure you guys have heard this all before a couple of times because this is a big problem. But what can you do now? You could stop using electronics before bed because, as you can tell, because less blue light is tricking your brain into thinking it's more daytime. So with computers, they release blue light, and that kind of tricks your brain into thinking you should keep staying awake, that it's actually the day instead of night. So limiting your electronic use 30 minutes to even 30 minutes before bed will help you get ready to go to sleep. And you don't necessarily have to fully cut off social media. I know some people who have done these things called dopamine detoxes, where they fully deleted all social media. They just kept off their phone. And once they did it for a month, and after the month, they just downloaded all the stuff back, and it didn't really work. But you could just like keep limiting your access or time on these social media apps like more and more, so you don't like have necessarily the same level of reliance on them. And while you're in class or while you're doing homework, you could definitely keep your electronics like either outside the room or outside of reach, so you don't get distracted by any notifications or anything like that. So next slide. In Belmont's YAC, this has been like a prevailing topic. So we have gone to the local high school and middle school, Carmon and Ralston, and we have published a flyer on the negative effects of social media on teenagers and how that works. And you could definitely, like for the YAC, we definitely talked to our city council as well. And we brought up this topic, and they're like running through it right now. And the main thing is to target these schools because the teens are the most susceptible to this social media addiction. And these are where the teens are. And these are where the teens will actually have to listen, like especially with school talks and stuff like that. So next slide. As Rohan was saying before, Governor Newsom signed some of these acts around what companies can actually promote and how phones are limited. So if you ever seen those pouches before at like a concert or a show, those are what's springing up around public schools that keep your phone locked away. And that's the Phone Free Schools Act. It limits or bans the use of phones on school campus during school hours. And this bill goes into full effect, like every public school in the state has to have some kind of rules around this by July 1st, 2026. And he also signed a bill, SB 976, which like promotes regulations around what these companies are knowingly promoting to teens. Like I said, these are businesses. It's in their best interest to keep you on the apps the longest, to promote these knowingly addictive content. So they're starting to roll out legislation to start restricting them from promoting that as well. But this is a huge problem, and especially in like our age demographic, like teenagers. And we hope to work forward on it and limit our full dependence on these social media apps to have, you know, some sort of social life. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it over to Nancy Magee. Yeah, thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, Ben. Great overview and really good tips. Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Magee. I'm the County Superintendent of Schools in San Mateo. Some of you may not know what a county office of education is, but there are 58 counties in California. Every county has a county office of education. And essentially, we're the middle agency between the California Department of Education, the state agency, and the local school districts. So we support all 23 public school districts in San Mateo County. Santa Clara, I believe, has more like 43 school districts, so it's larger than San Mateo County. And then the other unique thing about the County Office of Education is that of the 58 counties, 53 of them elect their county superintendent. 5 of them appoint by their boards. And so San Mateo County is an elected position, so I'm an elected official. First ran for county superintendent in 2018. I'm halfway through my second term, so I'm 6 years in office. But beyond being an elected official, which honestly I never imagined I would be doing because I've been a lifelong educator. So I was 20 years a high school English teacher, and then I got my master's in library and information science and moved into the high school library, which was an amazing place to work. And then I went into administration. So I feel like when you're a county superintendent and you're helping support, you know, the 100,000 or 200,000 students in your county, you really should be deeply rooted in policy and practice of education. So with that said, we'll go to the next slide. And, you know, the youth mental health crisis, like I said, I taught high school for 20 years, and I understood that what kinds of challenges and pressures that students were facing during those years that I taught in high school. But that was almost 15 years ago, and now I see a lot different, a much different world. By the way, I also am a parent. I have raised 2 boys, and they are now, you know, graduated from college and living their adult lives. But when they were in high school, Facebook and Snapchat and all those things were really just emerging on the scene. They were all very brand new, and it had a different it had a totally different vibe than it does now, which Ben kind of alluded to, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the youth mental health crisis was in existence before the pandemic. So a lot of times we want to blame everything on the pandemic, but actually in you know, prior to the pandemic, 2016, 17, 18, we were really concerned about, you know, youth suicide. There were some suicide clusters in our part of the state. And students were really showing up with depression, anxiety, and other challenges. So certainly the pandemic exacerbated all of this, and then the rise of social media has really taken it over the hill to something that's that we finally really have to pay attention to. And I believe people are starting to really pay attention. So San Mateo County is taking a lot of different steps to address this crisis. Go to the next slide. You know, you wonder, a lot of people may like poo-poo this idea that, oh, social media is not that big a deal, but actually the US Surgeon General has put out 3 health advisories on the mental health crisis in the last 3 years. And if I'm not sure if Rohan, you're going to share the slide deck with the participants, but if you guys have access to the slides, each one of those advisories is linked, so you can click on it and go straight to the information that Dr. Vivek Murthy has prepared for the country. There has been studies about, how much time young people are spending on social media, and it has increased over the last several years. And we know that social media has sort of evolved into, it can be a mean place where it's not really affirming and positive. So check out those youth advisor or those health advisories. But do know that this isn't just a made up problem. This is the US Surgeon General stating that the United States really has a major health crisis on its hands. So next slide. So back more than a year ago, in March of 2023, the County Board of Education and the County Superintendent of Schools, myself, jointly filed a lawsuit against the social media companies, Meta, Instagram, and Snapchat, on a very narrow argument that the platforms that these social media companies are devising, the codes they're using, are specifically designed to be addictive. I think Ben said that. And there has been evidence by those who work in these industries that that is actually what their goal is to keep you online longer. And you have probably experienced this where you're scrolling on your social media feeds, and before you know it, like 45 minutes has gone by, and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta go do something else. Because it's so easy to do the way in which the platforms are designed, and the code, the algorithms that they use are intentional. So just like, the previous presentation about addiction, this like activity for your brain taps into the same chemical reaction that a narcotic has. So it releases your dopamine and it creates this feeling, and when you step away from it, that drops way down. So you can potentially have feel different, but it also makes it harder to stop, or harder to really put your phone away for a long time. Like, I'm going to put my phone down, but then you find yourself within a minute picking it back up again. So that's all sort of chemically induced inside your body. It's not a matter of willpower necessarily. Although the more you know about how this stuff works, the better armed you are to protect yourself from falling into problems. I'm sure some of you have, known young people who develop an addiction to gaming, and they're up all night long gaming with people all across the world, and then they can't get up and go to school. They start to fall off of their daily life responsibilities, and all they want to do is be in that game setting, which is another addictive environment that's based on that digital platform. So the claim that we made in this lawsuit was that the companies are designing the platforms to be addictive to youth, that impact student mental health, impede learning, increase absenteeism, and have led to physical destruction of school property. We have a few examples of that. You can imagine that in San Mateo County and Santa Clara, and you're in the middle of Silicon Valley, and you decide to start a lawsuit against the companies that, work right next door. Like many of you may have, your parents may work for these companies, or their families are in our schools. So this is not a personal lawsuit, but we were the first lawsuit filed in the state of California, here in San Mateo County. And since that time, hundreds and hundreds of other school districts and county boards have filed lawsuits, joined the lawsuit essentially, and it is moving forward. Ultimately, I think the lawsuits will all be joined into one big one, and be a federal suit. So we'll see what comes from it. Next slide, please. So to address the youth mental health crisis, we have a coalition for safe schools and communities in San Mateo County. And last year we spent a year gathering all kinds of data and assessing what sort of services were already in place for youth mental health. And we've came out with this report called United for Youth, Vision 2030. It's a 6-year plan for closing gaps around serving the needs of youth. And we are mobilizing all leaders and community partners in San Mateo County to tap into this action plan and see if we can move the needle to better support young people by 2030. Next slide. I think there's a next slide, right? There we go. So in the end, you're never going to get away from technology as you see how much it has evolved over the last 10 years. And just think about in 10 years, what kinds of technology platforms and tools you're going to have available. Remember that all these technology platforms and apps and programs are essentially tools like a hammer, a screwdriver, and a wrench. You can use them to build a house, for good things, to be constructive, and they can also be used to destroy things. So it's your critical thinking in the middle that makes the difference between using the tools for good and using the tools for bad. But they're not going to go away. Next slide. So this is my last slide, but it's a really interesting data point to support what I just said. If you can see down on the far right, when YouTube came on the scene in 2005, it took 1,460 days for YouTube to reach 1 million users. And, there's 365 days in a year. So that's over several years' time it took YouTube to really attract. When Twitter came out in 2006, it was half that time, probably 2 years' time, to reach 1 million users. You get to Facebook, had a big splash, got a lot of media attention, and it took 300 days, about a year, for the Facebook platform to gain 1 million users. In 2010, when Instagram came on, it was 76 days to get 1 million users. When ChatGPT released in 2022, by the end of 5 days, they had 1 million users subscribed. And Threads came out in 2023, and it took less than a day to gain 1 million users. So it kind of shows the acceleration of the use of social media platforms. So AI is, already here and a big part of it. It can, again, be really a great tool for learning and studying. And it can also, if you want to use it for, getting around assignments, that's fine. But just know that learning is an activity. You use your brain as your muscle. If you're not actually using your muscle when you get out in the, get to college or whatever, your body's not in shape for the setting. So if you skip around the edges with AI to avoid the hard work of thinking, you're only going to hurt yourself down the line. So it's really hard to control that when you're a teacher. And who I know there are also apps and things that can help control that. But anyway, the bottom line is you're in charge. Build up your media literacy skills. Keep an eye on your friends. If you start to see that someone's sort of getting out of balance, then just like any other friend, and you would say, if you see them drinking too much, you might want to talk to them about it. And if they start to isolate and spend all their time gaming or on social media, you might want to have a chat and try and pull them out. So that's all I have for my comments, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben and Superintendent Magee. Does anyone have any other questions? Emily?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Thank you both for being here and speaking with us today. My question is, how can youth commissions play a role in increasing social media literacy and also just raising more awareness to combat this crisis?
Yeah, I could talk on this a little bit for what Belmont's been doing. So, like, to raise more awareness for like social media literacy, we have gone to like schools and stuff. We've had made flyers. I know it seems a little bit counterproductive, but one of the main ways to reach out is in fact social media, which can be utilized if you know how to use it correctly. And I feel like you just have to, the teens are the ones who are really experiencing this problem. So you have to go to the schools, you have to go to where like the teen centers, you can like a campaign, like a flyer campaign or whatever. Yeah. I mean, most of it happens in schools. That's what I would say.
And Emily, I would add to that even planning an activity that's in person and shaped around, leave your phones behind kind of event, where you can engage in person, and that's also a good way to like raise the awareness. But one thing I didn't say is with the Phone Free Schools Act, likely most of your schools already have some sort of rules and regulations around how you use your cell phones or how you access your phones at school. So I doubt that anybody's really, shaken up by this idea that all schools in California will have to have some sort of policy in place by 2026. But what I encourage the youth commissions to do is really ask your local school boards how they're planning to develop those policies, because they should not do that without you. They should not do that without your voice in the process. You should not see school districts just popping up a policy that they, got from some other district. There should be stakeholder engagement, meetings, discussion, education sessions, and youth should be right in the middle of all of that process. So make sure you get involved in that, in how your school district develops its Phone Free Schools Act policies.
I had a question. How do you see all schools implementing the smartphone ban during the school day?
Rohan, it's gonna be tricky because there's a lot of complexity to it. San Mateo High School in San Mateo Union High School District, they've been using Yonder pouches for 3 or 4 or 5 years now. So it just becomes part of the culture. That doesn't mean that kids don't figure out a way to beat the system, that's going to happen no matter what. But I think what you want to do is just like develop a culture that it's okay to set aside the distraction and pay attention to each other and pay attention to learning. So you really want to set an environment. And always there's going to be people that are going to, figure out a way around it or break the rules or whatever, but you don't pay attention to that part of it. There's also ways in which phones and access to the social media apps can be used in instruction. So teachers may explicitly want you to take out your phone and participate in a quick little survey or something that's fun and engaging. And I think the policy will likely be written to allow for that. But also as technology evolves, there's all kinds of things that your phone does for you. For young people who are diabetic, they can connect a device to their, insert a device under your skin that's connected to an app on your phone, and it helps alert you to when your blood sugar is low. So there's going to be so many ways in which there will need to be exceptions. And so this is going to be a really interesting policy making activity. That's why I think it's really great for you guys to get involved in that policy work, because it's going to be hard to create one rule that also makes room for flexibility.
I know in our own commission, we were discussing this, and at our school, there's like little pockets and stuff you put them in, but we were also running the issue. It is what happens when kids leave high school and they don't have these pockets or someone to constantly be telling them to put it away, and how are they going to develop this respect for other people's time and the natural consequences of what occurs when you're constantly on your phone?
You're so right. And I believe that our school should start educating young people about technology, social media, both the good and the bad and the ugly, earlier in the school trajectory, like in, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, all the way up through, and getting more and more complex as you get through 12th grade. You could have a great ethics class as a senior in high school that focuses on the role of technology in society. So I think we need to do more education. And I think that's something you could advocate for both in your communities. It's also something you could do as a youth commission, is hold an education session on smart, effective ways to engage with social media when you're a young person. So I do think it's not just about having a rule that tells everybody to put their phones away, but you have to build in an understanding about why I need to do that for my own benefit and health. And I guess last thing I'd say is a good analogy is that when America started mass producing cars, automobiles, like think about the 1920s, and you had the Model T. and how cars have evolved over time. There was a moment when cars did not have seatbelts, and they were all produced, maybe without seatbelts, and then they were started to be produced with them, but you didn't have to use a seatbelt. There was no laws that said you had to use one. You could use it if you wanted. And then it became a really big fight against the car manufacturers because they were going to spend a lot of money on mandating seatbelts. And people said, why do you have to tell me I have to wear a seatbelt? But now it's normal culture. So that's the way these changes happen. And usually when you start out at the beginning, like the social media lawsuit, might feel really combative and controversial, but it opens up the conversation and allows people to start to think differently. And it takes time to develop the culture for the norms in a culture. I guess that was a little teacher lecture I just gave you. So sorry about that.
Anya?
I know that like some parents might support phone restrictions because like their kids might be addicted to their phones, but others like recognize that it's necessary for safety and like can be very helpful with learning. For example, I know some people, including me, like to take pictures of like certain problems on the board because I don't have the time to write it down. Or I know that in some school shootings, it's important for people to like communicate with their family. And so I was just wondering, like because phones can offer like a very important resource for students, what do you think about these concerns and like how will they be addressed with the phone ban?
So when I talked about the fact that the policy making is going to be really complicated, you just listed 3 more reasons why they're going to be complicated, because parents really do rely on the fact that their kids have a phone and they can communicate with them as needed during the day, especially in a safety, some kind of security threat. So that's just going to be part of the policy making. The one thing to remember in all of this is there was a time when cell phones didn't exist. It wasn't that long ago. Maybe 20, 25 years ago. I don't know when the first cell phones came out, but so for all the time before that, people came to school and engaged without phones. So we do know that you can be successful and figure it out. And I just think that it's not going to be perfect. And not everybody's going to be happy about it. So I think that what I said about educating people about how to use phones wisely could actually become part of the policy that the districts come up with. And then they rely on people to carry their phones with them and have them in their backpacks if they need them, but that they're just not taking them out and using them during the regular school day. So there's different ways to approach it. And every school district is going to have to come up with its own plan.
Great. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Ben and Superintendent Magee. Our next speaker is going to be Rikhav Shah, talking about voter registration and civic engagement. Rikhav is a high school junior and a 3-year member of the San Mateo County Youth Commission, where he has served on the Educational Equity and Environmental Justice subcommittees. Since 2014, California is one of 20 states where 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register to vote. And today he will be speaking to us on voter registration and one of the core missions of the CAYC, enhanced youth civic engagement.
Yes, thank you, Rohan, for that introduction. Yeah, as Rohan said, I'll be speaking on youth voter registration and civic engagement in California. Yeah, so Rohan pretty much covered it, but I'm part of the founding steering committee of the California Association of Youth Commissions, as well as this is my third year serving on the San Mateo County Youth Commission. Next slide, please. Yeah, so for today's agenda for my presentation, I'll be speaking about, I will share some voter registration statistics in California, explain the steps and how to register, pre-register to vote, explain the importance of youth civic engagement, and also discuss ways to promote voter registration and civic engagement. Next slide, please. Yeah, so California voter statistics. So according to the 15-day report, there are around 27 million eligible voters in California, with 84% being registered to vote. And these are people 18 and older that are eligible to vote. So that's around 22.5 million. And you can see the party breakdown on in the statistics below. And then also highlighting the number of 16 and 17-year-olds, there's around 1 million. However, only 12%, which is 140,000, are pre-registered to vote. So that's a major discrepancy that you can see. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to be explaining how to register or pre-register. So as you know, if you are a US citizen and 18 years or older, you are eligible to vote in the United States. And if you are a US citizen and 16 or 17 years old, you are eligible to pre-register to vote in the US, which many people are not aware of, which that might explain the discrepancy in the number of people that are pre-registered. So yeah, if you are 16 or 17 and meet all the voter eligibility requirements, you can pre-register to vote at this link, or you can complete the online pre-registration application. On your 18th birthday, you will automatically be pre-registered to vote after a confirmation. Pre-registration is also available on paper mail-in forms, on paper mail-in voter registration forms. So the people who are eligible to pre-register are a United States citizen and resident of California, if you're 16 or 17 years old, if you're not currently serving a state or federal prison term for the conviction of a felony, and if you're not currently found mentally incompetent to vote by court. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is an example of the California voter registration paper form. So it may look pretty long and complicated. However, if you refer to the directions to the left of each numbered step, it should be a very quick and easy process to fill it out. Next slide, please. And just a quick note about voter registration or pre-registration. If you are registering to vote with your California driver's license, please make sure that your driver's license signature matches roughly with the signature on the voter registration form. Oftentimes, if they do not match up, one would need to get it back in the mail and redo their signature, along with filling out any other missing information. Next slide, please. So yeah, now for the importance of civic engagement. Good civic engagement positively impacts the community because a community that has a great amount of civic engagement has the potential to be a driving force in creating necessary positive changes in policy and legislation. Not only can this benefit that specific community, but it can also benefit the larger statewide community as a whole. And voting and registering to vote is our civic responsibility and duty, as it's one way we can express our opinions and beliefs. Next slide, please. So why is youth civic engagement specifically important? Youth civic engagement is important because it builds a foundation for a healthy and strong democracy. Civic activities such as voting, volunteering, advocacy, or participating in local government have the have positive impacts for both the individuals and the larger society as a whole. And here are some key reasons why youth civic engagement matters. Number one, it strengthens democracy. Youth engagement promotes a more inclusive democracy by giving young people a voice in the political process. Number two, it also encourages lifelong participation, as early civic engagement leads to higher levels of political and civic participation later in life. Number three, it empowers youth, as engaging in civic activities empowers young people to take control of the issues that they view as important, giving them a sense of agency and responsibility. Number four, it builds critical skills, as civic engagement teaches critical skills such as leadership, problem solving, communication, and collaboration, which will all be useful in many areas throughout life. Number five, it addresses community challenges, as young people can have new perspectives and innovative solutions to community issues. Number six, it bridges generational divides, as youth civic involvement fosters connections between different age groups and builds understanding across generations. And finally, it promotes equity and social justice, as young people are often strong vocal advocates for equity and social justice. Next slide, please. Yeah, so now ways to promote voter registration and civic engagement. How can we promote voter registration and youth civic engagement throughout the state? Well, you can do this locally through schools or community centers. An example of a project that I worked on at my school is at my school, Crystal Springs Open School, is the voter pre-registration drive, which I will speak about a little more on the next slide. But for now, how can youth commissions create positive change in this area? They can run successful events such as voter registration drives, and also civic education is super important because there's so many different forms of civic engagement. So just make sure that everyone in the community is aware of all the different aspects of civic engagement and areas they can engage and participate in. Next slide, please. So yeah, speaking on the voter registration drive, how would a youth commission go about creating a successful voter registration drive? Well, first, it's important to develop a timeline. For example, it'll be a little different for my example of my school voter registration drive because I'm running it in a school as opposed to maybe a community center as a youth commission would do. But for my timeline, I knew that I was going to make an assembly announcement on October 15th, run the drive during lunch from October 16th through 18th, and then mail in the forms on the 18th. And then additionally, you need to define each team member's role and responsibilities. For example, who will be in charge of getting materials, who will do outreach, who will be working the drive at what time, sort of like who will be doing what shift. And then also determine a location for the drive. This can be a community center, school, local park, and those are just a few examples. And then also you need to gather materials. For example, a table for the drive, poster paper for the signs, papers for the flyers, computer for the online registration, or voter registration paper forms. And then what's really important is publicizing the drive, as you need to make sure a big turnout if you want to really have a strong positive impact. So you can publicize the drive through social media, flyers, or county or town websites, or newsletters, sorry. And then, if all this, if you've made sure to do all these steps, then the last thing that's left is to execute the drive, which should go according to plan and really have a great impact on your community. Next slide, please. So just some final words to keep in mind. As Rohan said, the California Association of Youth Commission, one of our missions is to really promote youth civic engagement and voter registration. So I'll just leave you with these words. Youth civic engagement ensures that young voices shape the present and future of our communities, helping create a more inclusive, resilient, and fair society. Next slide, please. So yeah, thank you for listening. I hope this was a very informative and motivating presentation. I hope that we will all leave this conference with really a motivation to practice and promote civic engagement within our communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rikhav. I had one question. How, like, as youth commissions, how do you think we could more readily encourage towns and their youth to pre-register as like from the platform of a youth commission?
Yeah, so one way of doing this would be through using resources such as social media. That's a big, resource that we use on the San Mateo County Youth Commission, promoting our initiatives and events on Instagram. Additionally, like I mentioned, putting it in a county newsletter that goes out to everyone who signs up for the newsletter is a great way to do that as well. So yeah, there's just a few examples of how and really promote civic engagement and voter registration, and also really just explain like why it's important to register and pre-register, as it's our civic duty, civic responsibility, and it really engaging, really practicing civic engagement is super beneficial to the larger community.
Great. Kira?
Thank you so much for presenting. I just wanted to ask a few questions about the voter registration drive, as I think that's definitely a great idea, but we haven't exactly implemented it in our city yet. So I guess the main portion of it would be mainly collecting or just providing different paper forms and then sending them out essentially, and then collecting them and then doing the mailing process for the people who fill them out. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, so what we did at my school was we just set up a table. We had everyone, walk by during lunch who wanted to fill out their voter registration form, fill it out in private, and then fold it up, and then tape it, obviously, so it's because it's their personal information and sealed. And then we mailed it for them on the 18th, on that Friday. So yeah.
okay. Yeah, that sounds definitely very convenient for them. So a great idea.
Yeah.
Emily?
Yeah, thank you again for presenting. My question would be how incentivize people for their vote isn't as meaningful as others. What strategies would you have when meeting or encountering those youth?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I think you cut out.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Sorry. My question is, how do you respond to youth who are hesitant or skeptical to vote or pre-register to vote?
Yeah, I mean, I would just explain that, I guess really just explain to them the benefits of civic engagement, explain to them, because every youth has, I guess, really, areas of interest towards them, challenges, problems in the community that they might notice and really hold close to their heart. So really just explain to them like how their voice really matters, and how youth are going to be the driving force of legislation and policy as the years goes on, as we are the younger generation. So really just explain that the earlier they get started, the more involved they'll be, and the more I guess experience they'll have going in later in their careers, when they really have a great opportunity to make that positive change.
Kira, did you have another question?
No, sorry, I forgot to put down my hand. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Are there any other questions for Rikhav? Great. I just wanted to reiterate something else that Mayor Krolik talked about, which was the importance of our population segment is going to be super important for every election, local, state, and national. And so that's like another reason why it would be important to vote and to be pre-registered to vote as like 16, 17 years old. 16, 17-year-olds. And then I just wanted to remind you guys that we also have all of these resources on our website. If you just type in California Association of Youth Commissions, it's the first result. Does anyone have any questions about anything we've talked about so far? No? Okay, so Now we are going to break for about 15 minutes and we will reconvene at 12 noon. Okay, can we just start by everyone renaming themselves to add their the youth commission that they're from? Like if you look at my name on Zoom, I put like my name and I'm from the Hillsborough Youth Commission, so yeah. We'll just take a few minutes for everyone to do that. Okay, great. So, we're now going to shift gears to two areas that we believe strongly in at the CAYC, equity in youth commissions and research to help us do so. So Anya, who is a high school sophomore and the CAYC co-founder, and the vice chair of the Hillsborough Youth Commission, will be speaking about enhancing equity in youth commissions.
Okay, thank you, Rohan. Could you please move to the next slide? Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, hi everyone. My name is Anya Dalal, and I'm part of the Hillsborough Youth Commission. And today I'll be talking about equity within youth commissions. So for our agenda, first we'll talk about the difference between equality and equity, how it relates to youth commissions and its importance, and then some examples of equity in youth commissions, and how to take advantage of your resources and mentors, and how to deal with funding, and then taking actions to create a more inclusive and equitable youth commission. Next slide, please. Okay, so to start, let's clarify the difference between equality and equity. So as you can see in the graphic here, equality means giving everyone the same resources or opportunities. However, equity takes people's individual circumstances into account and provides them with specific resources to meet their needs. And this helps everyone reach the same level of success. Next slide, please. So in youth commissions, equity is very important. And a way you can help ensure this is when recruiting youth commission members. So you want to recruit people from different backgrounds. So you want to consider race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and geographic location to ensure that all voices and perspectives are represented. This quote from San Mateo County illustrates the intentionality of inclusiveness, especially reaching out to school staff and organizations to identify qualified youth from low-income families and youth of color. Next slide, please. Okay, so in my experience with the Hillsborough Youth Commission, when determining who would be a founding member, we consider gender, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, disabilities, and public and private school representation. While socioeconomic status in my town is relatively similar, it is important to consider that if you're part of a county youth commission or there's a lot of diverse socioeconomic statuses. Next slide, please. When my town's youth commission was first founded, 2 council members were its advisors, and they helped build connections with the rest of the town council and their network of officials in local government and education. However, the youth commission was later transferred to the city manager's office to avoid any conflict with the Brown Act, which was previously talked about. And so some youth commissions are affiliated with the Parks and Recreations Department, so they can also help provide like advising and mentorship. It's also very cost effective to use community resources such as the town hall, community centers, or libraries as meeting places. Also, technology is very important for obviously communicating with your town. So you can use things like a website. You can under your town's website, you can create your own section for your youth commission, and then you could also use Instagram for teens in your town, or Facebook for like older people in the town. And then if there's an digital announcement board, which we have in our town, you can use that to notify people of your events. And then in town emails, you can also notify people through there. Next slide, please. When we first started our youth commission, we didn't have funding, but after discussing it with our advisor, we were able to secure funding for the following year by using part of the city manager's budget. So additionally, if you don't have funding, building relationships with donors is very helpful, especially for big events. You can do this by emailing as many people as possible, as many small businesses are grateful to donate to you, and they hope that in return you will increase their customer base. And so you can do this by promoting their business to your followers through social media. Next slide, please. Okay, so taking action. To make your commission more equitable, ensure a diverse youth commission by including members of diverse backgrounds to reflect your town's demographic. Additionally, by collaborating with local organizations, you can get donations and support. Also, accessibility is very important, and making sure that people can attend the meeting is also very important. This includes considering the time of day, the location, and transportation, and offering a Zoom option for people who can't get there or have other conflicts. And finally, the agenda should be sent out 72 hours ahead of time so members can add items to the agenda if they want to. New slide, please. Okay, so now I will invite Rohan to share some of his recent research on local governments and the importance of ethnic diversity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anya. So as I started the CAYC, I observed that youth commissions in California disproportionately existed in higher income towns, which was kind of one of the mission goals that I talked about at the start of this conference. So accordingly, one strong focus is for the CAYC to help create new youth commissions, especially in socially economic diverse areas, which may have limited funding and reduced access to educational and recreational programs. I created a database of California cities, which included demographic data on each town, as well as the ethnic and gender composition of the associated city councils and school boards. With the ethnic and gender diversity of my own city council, I wondered, how does diversity in California local government affect public spending decisions? In addition to that, we're all high school students. Most of us are high school students, and we're interested in public education, and school boards are the people that are making the spending decisions for our education. So I focused my efforts of ethnic and gender fractionalization on local school boards and on different components of educational spending, such as teacher compensation, over the past decade. If you're wondering what ethnic fractionalization is, it is defined as the presence of more represented ethnicity. So the better the balance of ethnicities, or the higher diversity, the higher the fractionalization. So this is a graphic that shows a heat map of school districts in the state of California in terms of ethnic fractionalization, and it's denoted by a color scheme. So the lower the fractionalization, or the lower the diversity, the lighter it is, and when you increase the diversity, it gets darker and redder. So this is a zoomed in heat map of the diversity of school boards in the Bay Area. And I noticed that, or I broke the school boards into 3 clusters based on their ethnic fractionalization. So the first cluster are homogeneous school boards, or school boards that are quote unquote like all white all the time. And they had all white school board members, and the diversity of their school members never changed over the course of the 10 years. And you could see examples of those in these kind of white denoted jurisdictions. The second cluster is school boards that vary over time in terms of their diversity. So there's like a range of their diversity. And then cluster 3 is very diverse school boards. So you see them a lot here in the East Bay and on the peninsula. So here I've compiled it so you can compare the ethnic fractionalization versus average teacher salary in the Bay Area. And I found that the local school board ethnic fractionalization was strongly associated with higher teacher salary. So the underlying mechanism for this association is unclear, but this association cannot be explained by any one ethnicity, but rather the fractionalization or diversity itself appears to be required. This is potentially consistent with an ensemble effect where the presence of multiple different ethnicities across the school boards induces differential decision-making trajectories compared to more monolithic or less diverse school boards. Here I've showed the ethnic fractionalization on the left, and then the percent of white school board members of the total school boards on the right. And this tells a very similar story as increased fractionalization is dark on the left, and then homogeneously white school boards are inversely dark on the right. So these two graphics kind of got me thinking to facilitate creating youth commissions, which areas would benefit from youth commissions. And so through my research, we've found that the CAYC can target the following areas. First one is low fractionalization school districts or cluster 1 school districts, because a youth commission there would bring more diversity of youth voice to the school board and to those less diverse school districts. Conversely, higher fractionalization school districts would also benefit from the mentorship and resources which Anya discussed earlier. And then the final point that I wanted to make is this is an app that we're creating on just on the web, and soon we're going to be able to link it to the website, and so the CAYC can use this as it improves for future research. And so I think one of the main takeaways is that the CAYC presents just an untapped kind of place for research that no one has really ever delved into before. And I think we're seeing a lot of great results for our youth commissions. But now I wanted to turn it over to Hillsborough Councilmember Leslie Ragsdale, who actually helped mentor me with founding the Hillsborough Youth Commission. And she's going to be saying a few words about how we founded the Hillsborough Youth Commission.
Great. Thank you so much. Apologize on my phone. I've been traveling. But this is so impressive, the turnout that you have today. It's so impressive. I know you're recording this, so it will be used in the future. But I just think it's amazing that you are not only gathering the current youth commissions, but encouraging other youth commissions to form and figuring out the barrier. So thank you so much. So a couple of things. When we started, well, you guys started the Youth Commission in Hillsborough, we wanted to make sure, one of the reasons to create it, obviously to get the high schoolers' voices out there, but also in our town, we don't have a high school. And so the kids go to 3 local public schools and also a lot of different private schools throughout our county that go as far as San Francisco, go as far down as San Jose. And so it was a way to gather our youth back together that hadn't been together since elementary school or middle school. And then getting the voices out there was so important. So as Anya mentioned, one of the elements of diversity was the different schools, because we have people at public schools, private schools. And then you want diversity among the individuals with regard to ethnicity and gender and sexual orientation. But but I think it's also important, which what you guys did, is to think beyond that and to think about mental health status, disability, neurodiversity, which is so important, and also to be very considerate in the application process, because you want to make those questions voluntary, because some of the things are pretty easy. Where do you live? What school do you go to? I don't think people won't want to answer that. But certain questions, especially for high schoolers, they might not be ready to talk about their sexual orientation. And socioeconomic status, it can be also a touchy area for people. So it's important to have an option for that in the application, but for the areas that might be more sensitive, leave room for people to volunteer that information, but also don't require it. And I think we did that with ours. So how I help support and also with Councilmember Al Royce as mentors, we contacted local principals because we were a little bit aside from the principals you guys were directly connected with, we knew some others, and so we contacted them to help spread the word. Contacted the superintendent of the K-8 schools in our town because they could get the word out for older siblings. And then Rohan contacted, we'll contact all these people as well, but also contacted our local small paper that a lot of people read, and got a great article there written by a high schooler who has a regular column, and that engendered interest. It was kind of like you throw a party and you think nobody's going to come, and then you think, oh my God, 100 people are going to come. I won't have enough food. And it ended up the right number of people applied, but we went from thinking it was just going to be Rohan and Anya to we had so many applications. And speaking of so many applications and diversity, one thing that you guys did, which I thought was so important, was to invite all applicants to still be involved in the Youth Commission, even if they weren't officially commissioners. Maybe some of them could be full commissioners later, or they could just be involved in one or two activities. They want to take part in the fentanyl symposium, or want to help out at the holiday tree lighting, whatever it is. So I think that was really important to make people feel included. It's hard to be rejected, and I know Jackie Speier says you definitely can't get motivated by rejection and by losing out on something, but to be able to keep people involved as advisors, it's they're invited to the meetings, they're on the emails, and they are a part of the organization as much as they want. I think that was great. Let's see, trying to think of what other things that we talked about. I think that's pretty much what I can think of. Just again, I think Anya said it really well, the importance of diversity, the importance of being welcome to all voices, and being open in the meetings where people feel they can talk. And one thing I know you guys have done is you have large group meetings, and then you have breakout groups, and it shows that you're paying attention to different people speak out in different ways. Some people feel more comfortable in writing. Some people feel more comfortable standing up and making a big speech for half an hour. And some people maybe want to just get together in a small group. So it's important to recognize, along with neurodiversity, just recognizing that people present in different ways. And especially when in high school, you're still kind of figuring out how to speak out and how to be a public figure that you guys are starting to be. So I think that's pretty much what I have to say about the diversity and how we worked on that.
Thank you, Ms. Ragsdale. Does anyone have any questions?
Great. Thank you so much, Anya and Ms. Ragsdale. Our next speaker is Sofia Shah, a high school junior and the chair of the Los Altos Hills Youth Commission, and she's going to be talking about how we can influence state policy.
Hi, everybody. As stated, I'm going to be talking about how you can influence state policy and especially how you can utilize a youth commission to do so. So the biggest problem is that youth voices are the key to state legislatures and really all policy in the next coming years, and especially now. So state is especially unique because we have more voice in state policy than we do on a national level. People often say that you're able to make more change in Sacramento than you are in Washington, D.C., and that is especially true for youth. In the next coming years, the next decade, all of the policies that are going to be affected are going to be on us, which is why it's so important that we get our voices out and that we are directly dictating our outcomes and the problems that are affecting us. So specifically for my town, what we've been trying to do to relieve this issue a little bit is a couple of things. So first is we host our annual leadership conference. Every year, we invite a bunch of teens to talk about their experiences, and typically we'll have some kind of unifying theme around it. So in a couple of the years past, we've invited teen entrepreneurs to speak about their experiences. For example, we've had one student who started a thrift store and is now having her own online shopping business come and talk about it. These people and hearing about their experiences about what they're doing not only influences other people in the town to try and make their own mark and their own impact and to create a change, but it also sends a signal to the other town council members about what we want and what we want to see moving forward and what our interests actually are. The other thing that's unique to our town is that in Los Altos, there's a big housing issue. There's a lot of land and people want to move into Los Altos, but unfortunately, the houses are either too expensive or the houses that are built are currently owned and are too small of a size to fit large families. So to relieve this issue, they have been talking about taking a lot of big areas of land, so a lot of areas next to our local community college, for example, and making them into multifamily homes. This is a highly contested issue. A lot of families who currently live here do not want this because they say that it's going to increase things like a lot of pollution and a lot of noise because there's going to be a bunch of new people moving in. But obviously, there's a bunch of people that also are like, we just want affordable housing. And so there's a big debate that's currently going on. To also solve this issue, we invited one of the main council members that's been fighting for this change to happen. He came in and talked to our youth commission about what we wanted to see. We worked with him to create different kind of possibilities for how the housing could be done in Los Altos Hills. So for example, you can have a multifamily home, or you can build a condo, or you can build many apartment complexes. And we took the time and we talked to him about what we actually wanted to see. This is especially important because these houses are not even going to be built in the next 10 years. This is a large project. And so these houses would be directly affecting us when we come back and move into the town with our families one day, which is why it's so critical that he come to ask about us at our youth commission for what we really care about and how we really view housing, which is such a contested issue. Those are just a couple of solutions that my town has been doing, but there's obviously a lot more that are easy to do and that are very feasible and will make a big mark. So for example, getting in touch with state senators. A lot of them have different things such as internship programs. You can just email them and write about what you want and what you have to say and your thoughts about what either the youth want or what you want to see changed in the town. They will likely write back to you and you can work with them in the future as well to make other changes. This is also good for just general networking because maybe they can connect you with somebody else who will make a bigger change. The other thing is getting involved in politics, and this can take many different forms. This can be very simple, such as petitioning or trying to join a protest, which can be very small scale, or you can make it big scale. It really is just up to you and how you want to do it. The best thing you can do, however, is finding people to support you to do so, because politics is not a single issue idea. It takes a whole community to really get involved and make change. And so if you can find different organizations, for example, this organization is really great because it not only speaks on behalf of the youth, but it also gives you the ability to make your own kind of cohorts so you can express your ideas to your own town. But there's many other ones, and that this can just take shape in many different forms. And so it's really up to you about how much you want to utilize those around you to make change in politics. The last thing, obviously, is creating a youth commission to advocate for larger ideas. So as mentioned, I was able to utilize mine to make change on a local level. You can also do this on a state level by connecting, again, with other youth commissions, or by just talking about with your peers at your own youth commission what ideas you have, because they will be able to support you, that they can be your base for supporting any other bigger change you want to do, especially in regards to policy. Now we have a little bit of time if anybody has any questions or would like to propose any other ideas they have to solutions to this. Yeah, Harper?
Hi. I'm wondering if you have any examples of how the Los Altos Youth Commission or other like California youth commissions have successfully advocated for state level bills or initiatives, and if so, what made those initiatives most successful?
So I can talk about it in the context of our housing policy. The thing about Los Altos is at the state level, they actually had to pass new bills. So if you're building a new house, I think in the state of California, there's like laws that force you to accommodate for larger families because they're worried about large plots of land going to like single family homes. And so they encourage people to build things like condos or apartment buildings instead of just small homes with a big yard. In terms of what we do in influencing that kind of state level policy, for that case, it was more we had to accommodate with that and see how the town is in regulation with state level policy. But in terms of the opposite, I would say that you can still make a change and you could still speak up for it. So if we saw with this housing that we were like, this doesn't work with our, town, we think that this is a fellow issue and we, could talk about it with other youth commissions, like the Burlingame Youth Commission, if they have similar issues where they're like, we do not like them building more apartments here, we don't want as many condos, you can collaborate with them and then speak to your local senator about what to do. And then they can propose a bill and go and take it to the state or the Senate floor and talk about it and make amendments to it.
What do you all, this is like an open-ended question. What do you all think, just through your youth commission work would be an area that we as an organization should work on to affect state policy? Or what using our influence as an organization with youth commissions working together, what do you think is an area of policy that you think we could influence heavily? I mean, I think that we can work on the Narcan stuff, we can work on the social media stuff. But I think the fact that we're able to get everyone here on a Saturday morning just shows that we can work on it, and we're gonna get a lot of stuff done together with our kind of, now that our voices are louder together. So thank you so much, Sophia. We're finally at the end of our morning together. And I really wanted to thank all of you for coming and attending our first CAYC conference. I'm so energized and inspired by our speakers, former Congresswoman Speier, Congressman-Elect Liccardo, Mayor Krolik, City Manager Davis, Ms. Fullerton, Superintendent Magee, and all of our steering committee members, Penny, Ben, Ricky, Anya, and Sophia. We welcome all of your ideas and your passions. So if you're interested in joining the steering committee, please let us know. We will be working on these topics and focusing on writing legislation with our government leaders, especially for our in-person meeting in April. So obviously all of these details are subject to change, but right now we're thinking about having a in-person conference on Saturday, April 19th, 2025 in Burlingame. And we're going to be talking about sharing best practices and working together in new workshops and discussing youth issues that could be addressed collectively at the state level. So please, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or send us a message through our the contact us page on our website. Any final questions or comments before we adjourn?
Great job.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time. Have a great day.